for the sake of the privacy of my colleagues who are working next to me, please allow me not to show my face for now, but eventually I'm going to switch on the video so that you can get a glimpse of whom you're dealing with. My name is Grace Mureithi. I'm a trained researcher, scientist for that matter. I have been a lecturer for some years now, but most importantly, I am both a trained researcher and also trained journalist with specialization on science communication. So I have been doing science communication for quite some years now, basically doing venturing in science, but my focus being specifically on how to communicate that science to non-scientists, be it policymakers, be it the general public, or be it a specific class of people or audience, as we call them in the journalism world. Sometimes you can have a targeted kind of audience that you want to reach among the general audience. And we'll be seeing how we'll go about that. And I'm very glad to hear what your expectations are. However, I realized that only around 3 of us we are able to share our expectations. I see in the chat we are around 25 of us. And I'm going to encourage all of us to actually share both your experience and your expectation. I know you filled in a bit of a knowledge gap assessment or knowledge assessment, and I was able to analyze the gap for most of us. But I know sometimes what is on the paper is not really what is real, and I would encourage all of us kindly, let me know where you are and where you want to be. The reason is that our training is only 2 days, and communication is basically very, very general. And if I don't get exactly what each and every one of us is looking for, I might end up leaving out the need of some of us, not intentionally, especially when I'm explaining or giving examples. And because I don't want to structure my content in such a way that some people are feeling left out, I would really appreciate that I get to know where all of us are and where all of us are seeking to go after this training, so that we can be of as much use to you as possible. So please let us take the next 10 minutes. For those who have already done your introductions, kindly be kind with us so that we get to hear where the others are before we start this. Thank you and God bless you. I'll be listening. hopefully those of us who have not been able to share will get the courage to do so. Please, as you share, let us know what your, also where your level of experience is when it comes to communicating with the general public, and possibly what your area of study is at now, so that we can be able to shape this conversation more keenly in a way that it will focus on most of us. So thank you so much. Maybe I can just do just a brief of what we expect from this training. One thing, it's not totally listening. It's a very practical training. So we will be expecting that we actively participate in the engagements, and we also actively participate in the assignments that will be coming along. At the end of every day, we will carry home an assignment and start or end the day with the sharing of our assignments, like basically what you've put together and what you've learned. And I'm hoping that all of us can actually be able to participate in that. The other thing is that my kind of training takes a shape of open conversation. So I please encourage all of us to participate, because I've been doing this for years, and I know listening in doesn't have as much impact as participatory listening in. And it's one of the challenges that we often have on virtual trainings, that sometimes we think we can just listen in, but often it ends up not being very effective, which is something that we all don't want. So please let us be open to the idea that we'll be required to share quite a bit from our learnings, so that we can all advance together. And please feel welcome to do so. This is adult class, it's an adult class, so no answer is wrong. As long as it's your thoughts, they are worth sharing, or experiences actually, they are worth sharing. So welcome on board. So as you can see, today's content, we are basically focusing mainly on how to communicate with non-scientists. I have seen one of us is also interested to know how to communicate with scientists. But for those of us who are interested to communicate with scientists, if it is with hardcore science, what we call scientific training, then I'm sorry, we might have to wait for another training for that. But for today, we want to see how we can be able to break down very complex science matters, either in forms of papers or in forms of journal articles, or in form of even our own area of trainings, how we can be able to break it down and be able to communicate with non-scientific audience. Sometimes our audience is scientific, or you can have an audience of people who are trained scientists, but not in your area of study. When they are not in your area of study, please also consider them non-science audience, because they are not in your area of study. For instance, if you're an aquaculture scientist and in your audience, there is a doctor who maybe is looking forward to venture into aquaculture or find out something to do with aquaculture, you may assume that because they are medical doctors, they'll understand a lot of your jargons, but you'll be surprised that they may not. So even when you're talking or you're sharing your knowledge with aquaculture, with medical doctors, please let them be treated as non-scientists, for the matter that they are not in your area of study. So when we are talking about scientific training, we are talking about communication, we are talking about interacting with scientists who are in our area of study, or such a close sphere of study that you're sure they would be able to understand quite a bit of jargon that we use. So, and other forms of sentence structuring that we do, that we are going to expose today, so that we can all learn how sentence structuring and even message structuring is different for both science and non-science communication. So that is basically how we'll do it. Second, even as I share my notes, I will always be expecting that we first start off with a sharing of ourselves. For instance, in the first topic of sharing with or communicating with the non-audience, I have heard that amongst us, there are quite a number of people, from what I have heard and from what I have read, that have actually been able to have an experience in one way or another of engaging with non-science audience. For example, I see Cecilia Irungu, who is in counseling psychology. I hope you're comfortable with me sharing this. Who is in counseling psychology. Basically, I'm sure most of the people that you engage in your course of your profession, maybe not in your course of training, are actually non-scientists. So we want to hear experiences of how you do it, what has so far succeeded, and what has so far not been the best. Both experiences that have not been the best. I have had someone else who is already running a podcast. I want to hear how that is going. Where are you finding it easy? Where are you finding it a bit challenging? So that even as we share, people are also learning from us, because we are many and we all have our experiences, and it would be good that other than people just learning from me, that they can also get to learn from you. So I'm opening this forum for the next 15 minutes, and I am asking us to be bold and share so far what have your experiences been in both science and non-science communication. Where do you think it's going on well, and where do you think you're struggling, so that we can all share, even as I come in with my ideas of how maybe we can do this better. Thank you. Yes,
Yes, maybe.
Miriam, please feel free to unmute and address us. Thank you.
Okay, good morning once again. And yeah, I'm happy to start by sharing my experience. So, as I mentioned previously, I'm a podcaster. So, I haven't been at it for a while. I did a few episodes and then I stopped. Yeah, just other challenges
Oh,
I was
sorry,
experiencing.
Marianne, to interrupt you. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, Marianne. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
sorry. Could you
It's okay.
please check whether there's a way you can up your voice a bit?
Oh, I'll just move closer to my. I think I was a bit far. How is it now?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, so I'll just start again. Yeah, I'm Marianne, and I shared earlier that I am a podcaster, although I haven't been at it for a while because I had other challenges I was experiencing, and yeah, also joining school. Like I mentioned, I'm a postgraduate student, so that yeah, it was difficult to balance. But for the period that I had been sharing information, one of the challenges I had was in in the gathering of information, because when reading, I'm mostly reading scientific papers, but then I have to you know now break it down to audiences which are non-scientists, and actually that is my target audience, non-scientists, because most of the time the information we find out here, maybe it's not understandable, they can't understand, or it's just written in a lot of jargon that doesn't make sense to non-scientists. So there was that, but also trying to figure out the amount of time that would be appropriate for a podcast, because when it's too long it's boring, when it's too short maybe there's a possibility of not giving the full amount of information. And my podcast is mostly focused on promoting wellness and health in the African society, and tackling certain myths and misconceptions that people have regarding health. So yeah, that's so I'm hoping, yeah, that this training would point maybe help me to see a few areas of improvement, and when I'm ready to continue, then I would be sort of on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. First, I want to congratulate you for even the confidence to get into podcasting. It's not an easy place to be at. And we'll be talking about that, especially when we come to what is most of a one-way kind of communication. Like what we are doing now, training virtually with people that you're not seeing and whose reaction you're not seeing. Sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge. Initially, we used to assume that it would be better for people who are not confident, very much confident with interpersonal relations. But we came to realize that irrespective of your characteristics, still one-way communication is fairly more challenging for majority of the people than two-way. So congratulations. It's not an easy place to be at. And I want to believe that you'll learn a lot from here and you'll be able to get the courage or the what do I say? The confidence actually to continue it, and where we can be able to support. As you may know, TCC also has been running a podcast that has really been successful. We can continue supporting you on that. Myself also, I help shape quite a number of podcasts. Right now, I'm running around 5 of them. So we can share details of how we go on shaping that material. So I don't know how much you are likely to get from this training, but I want to invite you that even after this training, please feel free to reach out. If there is anything you will not have totally brushed up, let us pick it up after this training. And that's the beauty of TCC trainings. We're always happy to support you even after the main training. So feel free to reach out to me and I'll support you the best way we can. All right, anyone else who wants to share their experience?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Kindly class, let us feel free to unmute and share our experiences, please, so that we can also use our time well without too much of waiting lapses. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. I hope I can be heard.
Yes, Cecilia, you can be heard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me say that the experience that I have regarding communicating to non-scientists, although, okay, I happen to have presented a paper in a conference, and the challenge that I had was that the content that I was to present, I didn't know whether it was too much or too little. So I found myself taking a lot of time trying to filter and come up with something substantial that I could present within the 15, 20 minutes that I had been given. And so I'm trusting that by the end of this training, I will be able to, I'll be able to be, or rather I would be able to identify the content that I need to present, for instance, depending on the time that I've been allocated in a conference or wherever I could be giving or rather disseminating the information within the time frame that would have been, or AMA will be assigned to me. So I'm looking forward to being an effective communicator. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Cecilia. That is a journey I'm happy to walk with you. And I want to believe that this training is very favorably shaped for beginners in science communication. So I want to believe this will really favor you. Please follow closely. And like I made an invitation, even after this, feel free to reach out to me. I'll always share my contact details. We'll always share the TCC contact details, and we can always be able to work with you through what you may not get out of this, or where you may feel you need to polish. But most importantly, please let us follow the training keenly, because this is where you get to get the full and divided attention to what you'd like to learn. Thank you, Paco. Please
Much
unmute.
appreciated.
Good day, Grace. Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you are. You are.
Yes, my name is Mr. Pakodik. I'm connecting from Botswana. I'm so happy to be in this training because I'm a community member of Botswana International University and Science Technology, BUST. I hope you know the institution. It's just a new institution, but it's doing great here in Africa and the rest of the world because it's able to enroll foreign students from different parts of the world. I'm actually a scientist communicator, and I'm new into this training. I just wanted to share what my expectation regarding the training. So lately I've been elected into being the vice president of Botswana Internet Society. So I hope this training will really help me because we are talking about science and technology at the same time. And I'm also a member of Freedom to Reading Foundation. I've been elected as a member into the communication sector, and lately we'll be engaging in another meeting on how to start our action plan for this year. I'm looking forward to learn a lot from this training as a non-scientist, and thank you so much, Grace.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for your appointment. It's a big milestone. We are proud of you. So far, we have 3 who have shared. We need a minimum of 5, so please let us get 2 more. Thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
can you hear me? Hello,
Yes, we can. I don't know whether it is me who is hearing people a bit faint. Let me confirm first. Kevina, is everyone loud enough to you?
Yes, I can hear Mr. Paco well enough.
yeah,
Were the others
thank
loud
you.
enough?
Yes, the others do.
Okay, thank you. Then I may need to check on my sound. Thank you. Let's go on. I can still hear you, please.
Can I go forward? Hello.
Yes, please. Let's move forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Tongwelson Alex. I'm a PhD student from Uganda Matters University, Coast campus. I'm very grateful that we are going to have this kind of training. As far as my experience is concerned, currently I'm heading a primary school, private primary school, and my area of research is on education management and administration. I have been, I'm 1 year old in my course of PhD. I worked on my proposal and I have submitted it awaiting defense for differentiation. But I have always been having challenges, especially in the methodology part of the research. And I've been attending some courses online, similar courses with TCC Africa, which have shaped in my life. And I think the today's and tomorrow's training will shape me up because I'm going to benefit a lot, so that we are supposed to go and have some conference on the 8th of November this month. I'm supposed to make some presentation on my past paper to be published, but I've always faced challenges in communicating my ideas because the skills are not enough. So I think this course will help me a lot because it will shape me up. By the time I go for my presentation, I will have gained some knowledge and I become an expertise. Because the main purpose of upgrading or taking a course is to get the skills, the experience, the expertise so that one comes and serve the greater community. So I'm very, very grateful for this course. I think it will help me a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I struggled a bit to hear you, but we'll catch up later. And I want to believe that you learn a lot through this training. And please, if there is anything that you feel in my presentation I'm missing out that you'd like to learn more on, kindly feel free to contact me or to reach out during the trainings, and I'll be able to focus more on that. And this is an invitation to everyone. Now, one more last person before we go to the training. We are giving a chance to one more participant, kindly.
Grace, I have shared my contribution on the chat because my background is not very silent.
All right, let me read through it. All right, thank you, Francisca. I see your input, and yes, this training is specifically designed for people like you. So before we go to the main training, which will last about 1 hour continuous, I would allow us to please take a quick bathroom break of around 10 minutes, order what we need to order so that in the next 1 hour, we are all in and focused. Thank you. Can hear me? If you can kindly allow me to share my screen so that we start the class right away. I hope everyone else is in. Thank you. Sorry, team. Sorry, I seem to be having a setback in sharing my screen, but just give me a little more time. Thank you. So can everyone else hear me kindly? Just one or two to confirm.
You are audible, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the hitch. I was trying to switch gadgets. One seemed to have a bit of a challenge with the projection of the voice. Challenges of virtual communication, but we thank God that has been sorted. So my name is Grace Mureithi Korir, for those who are joining us. And as I introduced myself, I'm a scientist and a research scientist and also science journalism professional. So that is for those who are joining us. And today we are going through training on how to communicate science matters to non-science audience. And basically we said that by non-science, we mean people who are not in our sphere of science communication or our sphere of research. So basically, if you're a zoologist addressing engineers, kindly consider them as non-science listeners for the sake of audience segregation. So for today, we are going to go on a very tight schedule. The training is basically structured for startups or for people who are just basically going into science communication for the very first time. I see some of us already have an experience in that, in science communication. So for those, I will ask that you just bear with us the first few minutes as we do general introduction, but also see how much you can learn out of it. But from the afternoon, better part of the morning, I mean, we are going to venture into more complex details of science communication to non-scientists. So we have already introduced ourselves and gone through our basically what our experiences with science communication. So you'll allow me to go directly into basically making a difference or differentiating between science communication and non-science communication. Now, scientific communication basically is what we do as research scientists. We basically communicate our learnings, our experiences to the wider populace, most of which are actually our fellows. Most of them are people who are in our science sphere. So it becomes a lot easier for us to have what we call humanistic kind of communication, because we are usually in an environment where everybody understands what you're saying. Everybody understands the complexity of the material you're trying to share. And everybody is at the same page as you are. So basically the communication is usually very, very, very humanistic. And they are usually, it's more of learning other than trying to catch up. Now, when we try to look at the percentage of scientists in the world, we realize, especially in Africa, we are a very, very small population. The last time I checked, the science population was actually around 10%. I hope that has gone up, but it is a very, very, very slim majority. We may actually not think of it as such, because you see the issue that comes with being a scientist is that from a very young age in your career or in your studies, you are surrounded by people in science. You go to colleges that are specifically for science students. You go for attachments in institutions that foster your area of research. You're surrounded by lecturers and professors who are in science. And basically, we start misinterpreting the world. We start misinterpreting the world as being comprised of scientific or researchers, whereas that is not the truth. And if you want to know that that is not the truth, I would challenge all of us to step a bit, because being Africans, I'm sure majority of us have our rural villages. Please step back into your rural village right now and try and count how many researchers you know out of that village, or even in your estate where you live. Unless it is an estate that is very near a research institution, then or very near the a science college, then you may see that the population is bigger. But when you go to the general population, you realize that science researchers are very, very few in the world. Yet we are deceived to actually, in our minds, to actually think that everybody understands us, because, you know, we are many of us. No, we are not. Because even as we started by introducing, even if I am a trained researcher, but not in your area of study, or not in a sphere that is related to your area of study, I'm still a non-science to you, because I'm not likely to understand how you're going to communicate to me. And I think we have seen that, especially when we are visiting doctors, or when we are going to the engineering open spaces. You realize that you go in there thinking that you'll understand a lot of what is being shared because it's science, but at the end of the day, you realize that there is a lot you still haven't understood if it is passed to you, if the one who is passing the message assumes that you're in their sphere of training, or they basically adopt what we call a scientific kind of communication. So basically, today we are going to go straight into telling the difference between communicating to scientists and communicating to non-scientists. But before we do that, let us move into the components of non-science communication. Some of these components also touch a little bit on science, on scientific communication, but they are specifically shaped for non-science communication. So when we are talking about non-science communication, we have asked ourselves, how do we make it very easy and very precise? And how do we make sure that what we are communicating is basically being understood by the audience to whom we are communicating? Because this is the basic, the area where we really struggle. And I want us to write down the 7 C's. Just jot them somewhere down, because when you start writing, I want us, or communicating, whether you're designing a podcast material, or you're designing material for presentation on TV or radio, or writing an article, you'll need to counter check it against these 7 C's. But they're very simple. What basically the 7 C's mean is you need to counter check your material and ask yourself, is this clear? What I have written down, or the content that I have brought up, is it clear? When you're asking about clear, you're asking, is it easily identified and understood? Why is identified important? Because often when we are communicating to non-scientists, you realize that often, or a bigger percentage of our communication, especially for us who are on issues to do like health. I have seen another participant saying they are they mainly communicate about what life matters to the communities, to the local communities. Where that puts you is that you're actually engaging people who are either illiterate or semi-illiterate. And therefore, the tools that you choose to communicate to those people, we will get to see that tomorrow. But you realize that most of the tools you may choose are more pictorial. They're very pictorial, because we see like a picture communicates 1,000 words. But we want to ask, whatever tool we have chosen, is it actually easily identified, or is it directly tied not to us, but to the message that we want to pass along? And we'll see that when we are looking at how to use posters, and how basically to denoise our communication when we are using posters and other forms of digital communication. Denoising is very important, whether we are using charts, whether we are using photographs, whether we are using flows, or whatever we are using. it's really important to make sure that we denoise it so much to ensure that it is actually very directly tied to what we are going to be passing, or what we are going to call by the end of this day, the key message. We'll get to see what is the key message, but please realize that our message needs to be very directly tied and very easily identifiable to our key message. And what to note here, it's not about us, it's not about our study, it's about the message that we are going to pass. That is very important. The next, I'm saying that because it veers off the general scientific communication. Because scientific communication, we are trying to focus more on us and our study. Who are we? You need to give a brief of who you are. You need to give very complex presentations on your study. You know, you have to prove that you have done a lot of research into this, because that is basically what makes up a researcher. But when we are communicating to the non-scientists, we are getting ourselves off the picture and letting our key message take on the day. And that is the key, that is the number one rule of doing or succeeding in non-science communication. Let us always remember to step back. Let us always remember that when we are communicating to non-science, we come up from a point of trust. We do not need to prove ourselves out. And I know that is something we really struggle, and I'm expecting a lot of questions on that. How do we not need to prove ourselves? Because that is what we do throughout our lives as researchers. The reason why we don't need to prove ourselves is that when you're going to see a doctor, for instance, a doctor doesn't hang his certificates on the wall. I haven't seen one who does that. He will not start by giving you his CV. He will not start by convincing you that he's actually qualified to treat you, because he wants to believe that by the time you booked an appointment with him and walked him into consultancy room, then you already have trust that he knows what he's doing and is giving you the best. Therefore, we start our form of communication from a point of trust, that our audience trusts us, that our audience knows that what we are saying is something that we have actually studied and something that we actually have mastered. Therefore, we need to read ourselves the need to always want to prove ourselves, because basically this is what makes non-science communication very, very difficult for researchers, because we are basically shaped to always put in a lot of data, put in a lot of explanations, you know, try and prove our hypothesis, because that is the only way we will actually prove that we know or we are a master of what we are presenting. Now, when we are coming down to non-science communication, we are coming from a point of trust. Our audience trusts us, so we need not prove ourselves out. And the moment we can start with overcoming that hindrance, then we are on our way to becoming very efficient non-science communicators. But until we do that, we will find ourselves that years down the line, we are still struggling with very noisy messages that have a lot of data, that have a lot of you know, scientific jargon and all that. And it is the reason why I'm insisting on it, because this is what keeps us ever from engaging on non-science communication. We need to unlearn what communication is like. Thank you, Shadrach. So like I was saying, if you have been struggling with the desire to come up with content for non-science well, we call it communique, but basically it's just any content that is to be taken up but by non-science matter, audience, then look back and you realize that probably the biggest percentage of us, I would say 99% of us, the reason why we have a problem coming up with such messages is because we are struggling with coming up with a message that is clear to the audience and yet satisfactory to us. Striking that balance. When it is so clear, it looks so simplistic. And as researchers, we don't want to look very simplified because we glory in our complexity. And if you want to continue glorying in your complexity, then I'm going to start with an announcement that you are unfortunately not going to make a very good communicator to the non-science world. When you decide to go to communicating with non-science, you need to put down your crown. You need to basically give up the innate desire to glory in your complexity so that you're able to pick one simple topic, bring it down to as basic as it can be, and be comfortable with making one point at a time. 1 point at a time. For instance, if we are talking about the place of or the role of hygiene in fighting or preventing cholera, for example, we may want to pick just one issue. For example, how to treat water, drinking water, or how to wash our vegetables. Please do not come up with a 9-pointer message in the same piece of communique, because it's going to be too complex and it's not going to be easily understood and easily identified to the key message that you're having. Just come up with one simple topic: how to wash your fruits, or how to wash your food before making it, or how to handle your food past cooking it, or post cooking handling of your food to ensure that you're not exposing yourself to cholera, or as a way of fighting cholera. And trust you me, it sounds very simplistic, too simplistic indeed for someone who has spent years upon years doing research on public health, but that is what is going to change the world. And in our last training, for those who may have been there, you remember we gave an example of hand washing, and how hand washing has been a topic that has been passed to us for years upon end. Like, ever since we were young children, we've always been taught how to wash hands after visiting the toilet, wash hands before you eat, wash hands, wash hands, wash hands. And yet you see that when cholera came, when COVID outbreak came, the biggest spread of COVID was basically associated to poor hand hygiene, such that many nations had to take it upon themselves to retrain their populace on how best to keep their hygiene, how best to observe personal hygiene, more so with your hands, the parts that you ought not to touch, how frequently and how effectively to wash your hands, how to keep, you may ask yourself, why did we have to train ourselves if science is so simple and yet we have grown up with these things? Because science is not as simple or as easy as we take it. And this goes even to when we are talking to people, to a population that, in our opinion, is very literate and very exposed. For example, the policymakers. Often when we are talking to an audience that is policymakers, maybe it is our members of parliament or other professionals that have been appointed in, we have the tendency to give more of scientific research to our policymakers and expect them to actually get the to-do points out of those policies. And that is one of the challenges I've had in my area of profession. When people pass to me policy briefs for editing, and I'm like, this is not even a policy brief to start with. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's not even a policy brief. So we are not editing it. We are actually sitting down and redoing this policy brief. Because basically when you are passing the policy brief, you are passing up this brief maybe to people who are learned, people who have degrees, people who are professionals in these areas. And therefore you want to assume that they can actually consume this material. And the answer is no, because one, they do not have too much time to dig through scientific material, much as they may understand it. They just want to have a snippet of what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and the cost of doing it. And of course, why it is important for them to do it. So we need to have our message crafted in a very clear and simplistic way. Sorry, Tim. I hope you can still hear me. I'm sorry for that. So what I was saying is that the biggest step to becoming an expert in science communication, or non-science to non-scientist, science to non-scientist, is actually ensuring that your message is as simplified as possible, so that anybody who gets hold of it is able to actually digest it as easily as possible. The second consideration that we need to make is how short and straight to the point our message is. And that is what we need, concise. So when you draft your message, please go back and ask yourself, how concise is it? Concise basically means just be short and straight to the point. For two reasons. The people you're speaking to, or your audience, is not necessarily a group of scientists or researchers. For us, we are trained to be very good listeners, because we are basically sieving in through the content with a very close-knit sieve to find out where the error could be, to find out where the correction could be, to find out what the new knowledge you're bringing on the table is. So right from our training, we have been trained to be very keen and very keen listeners, and to basically sieve through every form of information that we are getting through. However, we realize that when we are communicating to non-science audience, this is very, very, very different from the reality. We are actually used to consuming very direct to the point content. And because this is not a conference, we are not actually here to gauge how valid your data is. We are actually not listening to you to find out how reputable whatever you're presenting is. We're actually here to learn. We believe you know what you're doing. We trust that you actually know what you're presenting to us. And that is what I was saying. We are coming from a point of trust. So basically, what we are looking at is, are we getting anything out of what you're saying? And how much belaboring does it have to be? Because science can also be very tiring, because it engages quite a number of our brain cells, and we will see how we can lighten up consumption of science matters as we continue. But one thing I want us to note is that science is actually very, very heavy to consume. Basically, because you have to divide through the bone and the marrow. It's not as easy as when we are learning through dance or music or comedy. When it is actually a science matter, it's a little more complex. And therefore it engages quite a bit of brain cells, and that tends to tire us. And that's why we are saying, please let us go, make it very short and go straight to the point. We'll learn how to do that, but it is important for us to keep reminding ourselves that that is important. The next is facts. We seem not to have a lot of problems with this, that we need to actually have cemented facts on whatever we are sharing. As researchers, we don't struggle with this. Actually, what we tend to do is that we tend to overdo it. But we are saying, as much as we want to make it very clear and very concise, we also need to make it fact-based. And how we make it fact-based, remember, when we are starting, we said, let us not try to prove facts. Let us try and make it very easy to digest. And that is why we are saying we are better off using examples and explanations. Remember, please, let us not so much dwell on hard data when we are doing non-science communication. Let us, one example or an explanation of why will actually do more good to the non-science listeners than a lot of spreadsheets. I'll give you an example. When you walk into your doctor's office, again, let me go back to the human doctors. When you walk to a doctor's office and perhaps you're being treated for malaria, it would be important if they let you know the percentage of people who have been treated for malaria that month, how the curve looks like, which drugs are actually more effective than others, for how long they have taken to be tested, the various steps of testing that they went through, and actually even discuss with you how the malaria infection actually grows into your body, so that you can know how better to prepare your body to fight this disease. It would actually be very intriguing. But how helpful would that be to you when you walked into your doctor's office to get treated for malaria? I think when you walk into the doctor's office, you just want to know, what am I ailing from? The doctor runs tests and tells you, yeah, from the test, it's malaria. And this is how you possibly got it. This is how you possibly want to avoid it. And this is the best way of treatment. Can we start treatment right away? Yeah. I think that is what you want to hear. You don't want to see spreadsheets in front of you. You actually don't even want to really sift through the tests that have been done. How have you conducted these tests? Who conducted these tests? Were they even qualified? How many levels of testing did you go through? What is the degree of accuracy? If it were a presentation, it would actually, a science presentation, we would want to hear all this. I'm just using this to contrast our science communication from our non-science communication. That even though you want to base your communication on facts, you want to use explanation and examples other than hard data and dwelling too much on your data. The next thing is correct. This one, again, we don't struggle too much as scientists, because our reputation actually is based on the accuracy of the information, and we have been trained that right from our training. You need to really reduce any degree of error to as close to zero as possible. You need to be very accurate. And that's why we are saying it is also important when you're doing non-science communication. It is very important to be, or science communication to non-science audience. You need to be very accurate in the information and also in the grammar. But here I like sounding more of a caution that do not overdo it. Do not dwell too much in trying to explaining. You know, we want, as scientists, we want to follow up maybe an acronym with the full explanation of the acronym and all that. Why don't you just use the explanation without using the acronym? You know, so that is basically, let us simplify it even as much as we make sure that the information we share is accurate. Sorry. The next thing we need to confirm is coherence. Coherence is very important because, and this is something that we need to learn actually as scientific communicators, because when we are used to presenting on science, we assume a lot of things, and rightfully so, because our audience is basically of science. But when we are coming to talk to non-science, we usually advise us to follow more of a storytelling structure. Storytelling, in that, as much as your information is very simplified, it is so tied to the key message that it is not losing flow. Let me give you an example. For example, if you're training something about hand washing, for example, a very simple topic, you need to tell us, why do we need to wash our hands? How do we wash our hands? When do you want to wash our hands? I don't know whether I have said how and when. Basically, the 5 Ws and the T will come to that. And all of them need to follow each other without losing the course. So you need to ask yourself, why am I even teaching these people on how to wash their hands? What have been the gaps? But as we go through that, we also need to ask ourselves, as much as that those are the gaps, how do we systematically teach them how to wash our hands in a very simplified manner, but in a very logical sequence, without overdwelling in some and actually concluding like we do in our scientific communication, where we'll do an abstract, which is basically very short, then dwell on the body, which is usually pages upon pages, depending on what you're doing. Then you have a very quick conclusion, and that's it. Yeah, because the body means everything when we are doing scientific communication. But when we're actually doing science communication to non-scientists, mostly, remember the conclusion is what matters, not the body. So the body needs to be very closely tied to the conclusion, because you will never have a space for conclusion when you are doing science communication. So don't wait to conclude. And if you design your communication in a way that you're waiting to conclude at the end of the day, please know you're setting yourself up to fail. The people will have lost it during your discussion of the body and your findings and all that, and they'll have basically jumped off. So by the time you're concluding, you're all alone. So when we are doing science communication, we are knitting together our body with our conclusion, because our body is drawing us towards the conclusion. And one interesting thing is that our conclusion is our key messages, and those key messages are being addressed in the body. So basically, our conclusion is followed, just precedes our explanation. I believe we understand what I mean, but if in case we don't, we'll be able to go deeper into that and you'll see what I mean. In that, for example, if you go to how to wash your hands, you need to therefore discuss how to wash those hands. Then follow it on by when to wash the hands, with what to wash your hands. You don't wait until you conclude, therefore, soap is better in washing hands than gels. Liquid soap is better in keeping hand hygiene than bar soap because of 1, 2, 3. We are not waiting for those conclusions. Give them while you're giving us the information that wash your hands with soap. And as much as is possible, use liquid soap as opposed to bar soap because of the possibility of passing the germs when you are handling the soap. But if this is not possible, if you're not, you do not have access to liquid soap, then you'd still use the bar soap. And if you do not even have access to bar soap and to liquid soap, then you're better off disinfecting your hands or using protectors like gloves than not keeping your hands clean at all. So basically discuss your findings, your conclusions, and your research together with the point that you're trying to make. That basically is what creates the coherence. And then which is far a far off spin from the way we design our science materials. And then we have, sorry, complete. Again, this one we are not likely to overdwell. This one we are very good at it as scientists. We always want to be sure that actually your message is very complete and that your message is the take home for the audience is something they can actually benefit from. And of course, there is the issue of being courteous. So you always use polite and professional tone. Why is this C important? Because as professionals, and allow me to say this, but it is all of us as scientists, we basically, most of us have an attitude of thinking, if you don't understand me, then you're not smart enough. It may not be conscious, but it comes out in our subconscious as we communicate. And trust you me, I deal with scientists every day. Myself, I'm trained as a researcher, but I can tell you it keeps coming through. And it is not our fault. I don't think it is something that people do intentionally. I think it is a matter of our training in that we mostly engage with people who are in our line of trainings and who easily understand us. Therefore, if you meet someone who doesn't understand what you're meaning, it basically means they're not fit to be on the table. But remember, when you're talking to non-science audience, an engineer may not actually very well understand what a vet doctor is talking about, but that doesn't mean they're not fit to be at the table. It just basically means that you have been learning a different set of jargon from what you have been learning. It basically doesn't mean they're not fit. When a sociologist is actually not communicating very well with a medical doctor, the same things come to play. And even when you're talking to a dance artist, if they started bringing up their jargon and their moves, you'd easily be lost. So it's not that they're not worthy of sitting on the table. It's basically that all your lives you have been dealing with different kind of materials. So especially when you're doing verbal communication, it's important that we keep it at the back of our minds to always be very polite and try as much as possible to apply a professional tone. Let us be kind, let us be humble, and let us go out of our way to actually be polite to our audience. And by polite means, let us not dismiss, especially when we're interacting, any question as too simplistic. Often we do that as researchers, and it doesn't help us at all in our communication. I will take a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3, take questions on anything that has to do with that, so that as I build up, I can see which area of the C to dwell on before we go to the T, which is very easy to roll out. Sorry. Okay, any question on the 70s? My people, are we together?
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you for that confirmation.
Mr. Paco has raised his hand, please.
Okay, please unmute. Unmute and ask.
Thank you so much for soundful presentation, Dr. Grace. My question is very, very simple. I just wanted to know if you've complied with all the 7 C's, but still the communication went wrong, what might be the cause? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, but allow me to ask more clarification. What do you mean by communication still went wrong? Is it that you feel it was not understood? Or is it that you felt you still didn't get your point across? Or where do you feel your communication could go wrong so that I can give a more straight on answer?
Okay, thank you very much. In a simple term is how maybe it was never been understood by the person who have to respond to the communicator.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go into a more detailed development of messages where we will be able to apply the 7 C's. I encourage you that you please prepare a brief one, then share with me, then I'll be able to explain why possibly you felt that message still did not go right. I know by the end of this, you may have identified it yourself because we are going into more details on this. But in case you will still not get why that went wrong, please feel free to reach out. I'll be able to help. Perhaps after the assignment section, you can send me that, then we can be able to relook at it. But basically, when you are obeying the 7 C's or keeping to the 7 C's the way they ought to be, your message would or ought to be very, very, very effective. Your messaging ought to be very effective. But I know where mostly people struggle in, and where I also struggled in for a very long time, was on the point of clarity. And that is possibly why I overdwelt on it. Clarity. How do you come up with something that is simple to be understood? And we'll see a lot about how to eliminate jargon, how basically to restructure our sentences, like I have already preempted, how to use visual aids where as much as is possible, depending on what our audience structure looks like. We're going to look at all that. But as we do that, I think this is what I would call the key plates that will guide you. Once you have designed your message, run through the 7 C's and check whether your message is actually running as per the 7 C's. Before I go to T is very simple. Let me get to C. I hope I have answered you, Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. But feel free again to catch up if you still feel you did this the best you could and still didn't get it right. Anybody else with a question? I don't know whether you're getting a lot of interruptions from my environment. I'm sorry, a lot of building is happening next to our office. So I'll ask that in case the disruption is getting you, kindly bear with us. That said, please let me get another question or two so that we move on. Anyone else with a query? Remember at the start of the class, we agreed that we please make this as interactive as possible. It's also encouraging to the trainer that I'm not talking to myself. So please shoot your questions.
There is another question in the Q&A session, chat session. Just go for it.
Sorry, did you say you posted a question on the chat?
It seems like Leosi posted a question in the chat, ma'am.
I don't know for what reason. I seem not to see. Oh, this, how effective oral submission? How is effective oral submission achievable? Thank you for that, Kosgei. Allow me not to have a straight answer for that, because basically how it's achieved is through what we'll be learning throughout the day. So this is one of the steps of how to achieve it. Basically, make sure that it obeys the 7 C's of effective communication. I hope that answers. But that is basically how we are learning how to master oral communication. Because when we are talking about communication to non-scientists, it comes in different tools and in different forms. Sometimes it's going to be oral, sometimes it's written, sometimes it's dramatized, sometimes it's digital, but whichever tool and the form that it takes, it's still science being communicated to non-scientists. All right, let us jump now to the T. The T is basically timeliness. The T is basically timeliness. And why is the T important? Because we usually talk of effective timing of our messages. And timing comes a lot with relevance. And that is something that often we miss out as the researchers, because for researchers, we are wired a bit differently. Allow me to share my experience when I went into basically non-science communication, and but by that time, science communicators were not too many, so we were basically being hired by media houses to actually advise and also take part in crafting of their science messages, and also advising on the editorial and editing and all that. Because most of them, as much as they had been trained a lot on journalism, majority of them were actually not scientists, but we thank God, like in Kenya, we are seeing a lot of scientists getting into journalism, which is a very, very, very good move, because it actually improves the quality of the material that is going out there. Now, when I was new, I really used to struggle with timeliness of my message. Because you see, how I was trained is, for example, if you have seen reliable information that there is a possibility of an outbreak of cholera, even if it is just one incident that has been confirmed, the fact that you are trained as a scientist, you know that the best time to tackle it is now. Okay, the best would have been before it happened, but the second best is actually now. Like, we really need to deal with this right now. Because if we don't deal with it right now, it's going to spread, and it has a very big chance of becoming a crisis. All of you would agree with me, right? But now the learning that I had to do when I went into media was that was not how they saw things. Because to them, they want to hit it when it's biting. Because if they hit it when it's not biting, nobody is interested. Like if there has only been one outbreak of cholera, it's not newsworthy yet. It's going to be newsworthy when actually it's becoming a crisis. Now, by that time, everybody will listen. By that time, the policymakers will listen. By that time, basically, the populace will listen. And remember, in the media sphere, they are not there for education purposes, precisely. They are also there for, with the need to make money. So if you are giving information that is very useful, but is not likely to, sorry, my screen is running a bit up and down, so apologies for that. So if you are not able to make money while you communicate, then you're basically out of business. So that is not how the media world views it. The media world views it as, it's okay, you prepare the material, let's see what we can do, but we are going to hold this until it's a crisis, right? And I used to find that very immoral. For me, when I was young in the communication field, why do you wait for it to be a crisis so that you can actually share it? But you see, it was my dissatisfaction was coming from my area of training and also exposure, because I expected that everybody will realize that an outbreak is better prevented than put off. It is better for everyone. It is better financially. It is better for the humans who are being it is better even for the economy. It is, in all ways you look at it, it is better prevented. If it is not prevented, tackled very early. But now, when the media houses would say, no, this is not publishable, this is not well timed, I always used to struggle with that. But with time, I still came to appreciate where that plays when it comes to non-science communication. The truth of the matter is, we may hate to admit it, but they are right. Often people listen best when they have a motivation to listen. And the motivation could be positive, the motivation could be negative. And that is why you see topics that the media wants us to listen to, but they are not drawing a lot of attention. They will always try to motivate us. One of the motivations they use is fear appeal. For example, if they want you to listen to information, say, about cancer, allow me to use a very sensitive topic as an example, please. They know the importance of communicating cancer, or maybe they have been given a contract, maybe to share cancer information. Maybe we are celebrating, the Cancer Day and all that, and we want as many people to listen and all that. For them to cultivate the audience to actually be able to listen, they start by creating a motivation by using a method that we call the fear appeal. They first start by discussing the very ugly clause of cancer. For example, they start featuring people who have been suffering with cancer. They start featuring how expensive cancer is to treat. Remember, this is before the day or when they are supposed to be running the content. They start featuring by how underfunded the cancer treatment is by our government. They take us through the difficult parts of the battle against cancer, which is real, yes, but they really make it as raw as possible. Why do they do that? It is basically to build up our emotions, to prepare us for the information. because they know if they say today we are actually running an episode about cancer, not so many people may actually listen, or not as many people may listen as compared to when they have already run a fear campaign. When they started off with a fear campaign, then everybody now is all ears. So when they are told on Wednesday we'll be having our experts discussing with us how better to deal with cancer and all that, everybody will be tuned in. And you know what? That is what they want. So, and that is what basically, that is just how life works out here. People need to be motivated, either positively or negatively, to take your message. And there are so many ways of motivating your audience. You could motivate your audience by publishing on something that is actually really, really, really biting, or something that you feel is very new and encouraging, or just basically using a very compelling message. Those are some of the methods we use to create attention and basically prepare a good timeliness of our discussion. But because science also involves discussing very sensitive issues, we also want to prepare timeliness in terms of emotional appeal. As much as we use fear appeal, there's also emotional appeal. For instance, as much as you may want to discuss issues to do with, again, let me use the sensitive topic I've used of cancer, you do not want to do it maybe shortly after a prominent person has died of cancer. You don't want to do it that day or maybe the next day, because emotions are high, emotions are running very high, and you may say actually something that may make you look very insensitive. So basically what we do in the media, we forerun. We use the emotion to actually forerun the content, and then content will come after the shock is over. Because fear and shock don't go very well together. So if you combine them, they are going to be too much for your audience. So you want the shock of the demise to go on, unless of course it is a public figure that has been sharing their cancer journey. Then that way it doesn't make a lot of damage, cause a lot of damage. Sorry, if you share your cancer information there and then, because their demise has not come as a shock. I mean, they have been sharing and preparing the population. But if it is a sudden death, then we don't want to jump onto it and now start talking about cancer, different forms of cancers, and how to handle them and all that, and how to prevent them, and how you have a breakthrough in medicine. You've actually discovered a herbal concoction that can actually lower the chances of cancer, and all that. They are great, and we encourage you, if you have breakthroughs in your research, please share, but give it a little bit of time so that the shock actually doesn't coincide with fear and your message, because it is not going to be very well taken. So that is why we usually say, ask yourself, how timely is my message? You need to take advantage of when best the audience is listening, but you also need to balance that out with the emotions of the audience, so that you don't do it when the emotions are all over and when the emotions are actually very sensitive to the topic. This just the same way we are very keen on how to pass across the message of demise. Like if someone died, we're very sensitive on how we pass that message, and at what time we pass that message, and how we prepare our audience for the message that is coming. Yeah, that is also what ought to come to some of our very sensitive messages that we need to pass across. That is when it comes to timeliness. But for timeliness, it is something that we achieve with time. That is why it is not in this list, because remember I said this is like the 10 commandments, which you need to counter check. Use this to further edit your communique, to further edit your message. However, when to release that message is now determined by the timeliness, and that is more so of you making your own personal judgment. But if you're working with a media house, they will always, with a media house or a publishing body, they'll always advise you onto how timely it is. But if it is like your podcast, or maybe you're running your own live show and all that, then you may need to engage a little bit of your instincts to tell you whether it is the right time to release that message or not. Okay, so now I would have liked us to go to the issues of the advantages of building effective communication. But having seen where most of us are in terms of communication, I feel like this is too basic. So you will allow me to basically skip through it, but it will be there as part of your notes. Allow me to skip that and basically go through the different types of non-science audience communication materials. Usually we start with op-eds. But before we go to op-eds, I would like us to basically hold another brief discussion. Remember, I always say that I want to custom make this training as best for you as possible. So I want us to check our level of interaction with non-science audience, so that I can gauge whether majority of you would fit going straight to the op-eds, or could we go to other maybe digital forms of communication or something else before we go to op-eds. So I'm going to ask us to please participate in this discussion and make sure we share what our experiences are, so that I can actually decide, or we can together decide, which tools to dwell on. Because like you all know, those of us who have attended our full training, it's usually a 7-day training with a lot of practicals. But now, this being a 2-day training, we may want to focus more keenly on what is best for our audience today. So could we please share what our experiences are, in which areas of communication you are? Is it digital? Is it publishing? Is it media? So that I can get to see which tools to actually shape our conversation more on. Is that a good thing to do, or do we just assume we are all good to jump into op-eds and jump into it? Basically, we'll discuss all these tools, but I want to see which ones to lay more emphasis on. Ignore my screen, please unmute and share with us. When I'm sharing, your chats may not come straight onto my screen, kindly. So I prefer that you unmute and share, please. I would like at least more than half of us to participate. Kevina, are you still in the room?
Yes, I'm here, Grace.
Is my request understood?
Yes, it was very clear to me.
Okay, audience, please let us know if maybe you have not understood what my request is. Remember kindly, this is for your good. I just want to shape this discussion in a way that best fits you so that we make the best use of these 2 days. So kindly share where you are, what forms of communication you are looking to go into, how you're looking to share your communication with non-science audience. I already have someone who said they want to go into podcast or they're already in podcasting. I would like to know how far that is, how many of us are looking at that. I have seen other people, someone else say, for them, they're more interested with oral presentation. And I want to know as many as possible. Someone else said they're in media like me. So those ones is basically through media communication, but I want to know as many as possible, where are you and where are you looking to go into, so that I don't keep training you on publishing and yet your area of communication is actually not publishing, so that I be able to know how to balance it out. Kindly just let's be open, let us share.
Okay, thank you, Grace, for the opportunity. I think we have heard you very clearly. Personally, I would like to know more how to communicate when it comes to publishing articles or such a kind of material. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Someone else? If we could please, I don't know, we do not have too much time. So if we could kindly feel free to just jump in. There's no protocol, there's nothing, just unmute, jump in, share, mute, someone else unmutes and shares.
Hello. Yeah, I'd already shared my interest in building my podcasting skills, but in addition to that, being a postgraduate student in infectious diseases, I would also want to just learn how to publish, because I see that me being in that area in the near future, when doing research and just learning how to publish and share the information to wider audiences. So yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you very much. A few others, quickly, please.
Hello. Thank you
Yes,
for
please.
your presentation. It is very clear for me. Can I have a presentation after?
Can you have what? Sorry?
The presentation, your slides.
Oh, yes. The training material will be shared with all of us at the end of this training. So please don't worry even to take too much notes. I will. We always share the training materials with our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
And where is your area of interest? Where do you see doing most of the communication with non-science audience? Sorry, I was following up our conversation. Where do you see practicing most of our non-science communication or non-science audience kind of communication? Okay, I think I lost my friend. Okay, someone else? All right.
Hey everyone, this is Susan. I'm interested in oral presentation and being a student for Masters in Health Informatics. I'm interested in publishing my research work. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Susan, for that. We really appreciate. Now, with that sharing, then I will assume, and I hope rightfully so, that most of us are looking to, at one point, engage in published discourse, but not published discourse with our researchers and our professors, but with the general audience. And with that, this is where now the op-eds come in. Op-eds basically are what we call the open editorials. Initially, they were referred as opposite editorials because basically of where they were placed. But as media, grew, most of the people adopted open editorials. Basically, these are what we would call the typical newspaper publishing that dwells on mainly science material. Now, as you may notice, we are not talking of magazines. I know there are magazines that are designed to reach out a certain group of people. For example, you can have an agriculture magazine or newspaper. Newspaper pullout and all that. No, we are not talking about those. We are talking about open editorials, which basically means it is a part of a general newspaper, but it is, and being a general newspaper basically tells you it's being published in a forum where the greater discourse is more social discourse, political discourse, and all that. So when we are introducing science, then it is sticking out, it is sticking out the content, and we need to kind of plummet it down a little bit so that it doesn't stick out too much. What that means is we need to make it as appealing to the non-science audience as possible. Remember, those people have been, those who have been reading the newspaper have been running through politics and development and social affairs and news. So for them to be able to carry through with science content, then we need to do our part in ensuring that the content is easily digestible. But at the same time, and that is what we have been dwelling on the past, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that our meaning is not lost and that our article is actually publishable in the material, in the newspapers that we want it publishable. So let us move into that. We will be able to go through the op-eds, and by the end of this, I will be sharing an assignment where all of us will be coming up with an op-ed material, which we will share tomorrow morning. So I think it is good for us to run through. I will open up a forum for questions and clarifications at the end, but I will be expecting an op-ed, a sample from all of us by tomorrow morning, kindly, all 40 of us, so that, because the nature of this training is that unless you do, you're really not learning much, and also as a gauge of how much we are getting out of this. So before we go into the actual training on the op-eds, I would like to know whether there is anybody who has actually attempted an op-ed amongst us, and what your experience has been. It could also be that you have not attempted, but there's a particular writer you like. There's a reason why that is important, why we are asking. Or maybe it is not just one writer you like, it is a number of writers who actually follow a particular writing style. So any of the three, maybe just share with us, have you had an experience? Have you tried or have you successfully published an op-ed? Or let me call it for now a newspaper article, and then we'll be able to know whether it was an op-ed or not. And then the second thing is, do you have any writer you like? Is there any writing skill that you like? The floor is open. Please, no particular protocol, just unmute, share with us. Kindly let us make this interactive. And time is really rushing, so I'm just gonna request you very politely, just unmute and share. Don't be shy. It's an adult learning forum. You know, my nature of training is that if there is a phase we are at and we are not participating, we get stuck. So please don't wait, hoping that I'll get tired of waiting and we'll move on. This needs to be done. So please let us interact, especially for those of us who checked in the morning. I know there are those who have just come in. They may be wondering what is happening. But for those who have carried on with us, please feel free to, if you don't understand even where we are at, ask, but let us interact. And the male audience has been particularly quiet. Okay, allow me to motivate you. Brian Muchema, please unmute and share with us your experience with op-eds.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Wow, you served me. Maybe I could benefit from assistance from one Kasuku. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I think you asked a colleague of yours to answer you.
Yes, please.
Okay, please let them go ahead.
Is that me?
Yes, Kasuku. Kindly. Thank you.
Okay, apologies for any background noise. Okay, I've kept quiet because I haven't heard about OPED, so for me this is like a new thing. And then yeah, that's why I'm feeling stuck to answer the question. But looking at Florence Onyango's comment, she says that she's published several op-eds in our local newspaper, the Daily Nation here in Kenya. I have an idea of what that is because I've seen colleagues write up maybe about climate change, about the environment, about human-wildlife conflict. And I think this is something that I can also venture in because now looking at it, I remember that after each I like to call them articles, but I'm seeing they're called op-eds. Down there's normally an email address if you have any comments or if you'd like to contribute. So maybe now, thanks to this training, I have something to think about of what else I can do. But as an individual, the experience that I have is in working with communities. And for me, it's always about really just breaking down the science, the jargons, the big terms to be really, really simple so that anyone, whether it's a child or an elderly woman or man, they can really understand because yeah, for them to understand is important. At the same time, what their input in relation to what you're trying to share with them is also very important. So it becomes really nice when the language is simple. And having learned about the 7 C's and the T, it makes me feel like I'm at the right place and I'm learning. So thank you, and thank you, colleague, for prompting me.
That is very nice. Thank you so much, Kasuko. I really appreciate that. And thank you for calling out Florence. I have seen her text. But before we go to Florence, Florence, please prepare. You'll be sharing with us what your experiences have been. Allow me to motivate Josephat Njoroge. And then Josephat Njoroge will be followed by Henry David Bayo to please share with us what their experiences have been.
Hii experience ya Zoom ni better kwa
Josephat Njoroge, are you with us? Please unmute. Okay, Henry David. Maybe you can go first. Men, please don't bring down your, don't let down your male folk. Kevin Nyariki, do you want to save us? Or Kevin, I'll excuse you a bit. I think you have joined us a bit late. Let me see. Emmanuel Okalang. Emmanuel, are you with us? Gentlemen, you logged in and walked into another meeting, or what is happening? Edward Kanda, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
All right. Thank you for saving the male folk. Please let
Yes.
us know what your experience has been with op-eds, just basically based on these 3 questions that we have asked.
Yeah. Yeah, generally, I think it all depends on the subject area and the audience you are targeting. And most importantly, it is good you have the general knowledge about the audience you are trying to send your message across to, so that at least you know how to present it in a way that they will understand you. So when you don't have in-depth knowledge about what you are trying to put across, that is what the problem lies, that maybe they may not be able to discern or decode to whatever you are presenting. Then when you know them, then you know how to wave about, and so that at the end of the day, you have your message across and everybody understand. I think that is a little bit experience I have, because I've done an extension work before in the rural area and other districts. Sometimes you need to know the level by which people absorb what you are putting across, and that one also will help you strategize in a very strategic way, that all the 5 level of absorption, all the categories of people will be able to get your message across. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So to close this, Florence Onyango, I think we are not new to each other. Perhaps, if I am not wrong, we are not new to each other, and I'm glad you actually made it to this forum. I know you have published a bit on, if I'm not wrong again, you're a climate change expert, am I right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so we are not very new to each other.
About history and climate change.
Yes.
That focus now, and how to educate especially the rural folk, those who doesn't know anything about, even in the elite level, a lot of people don't know really what is happening to us. And my focus is to in a micro way that we can mitigate against the climate change by letting more plants getting closer to us in our homes, in our offices. There are certain plants that can simmer or sequestrate the carbon for a long time that will save our health and environment. So this is my message now, but the problem is how to put it across. That is why I'm trying to learn some of these things, so that at least it will help me gain more experience.
All right, thank you very much, Florence. I'm glad we get to meet again. And do you mind sharing with our audience the rest?
I'm Edward.
Sorry?
I'm Edward. My voice is small. I'm Edward.
Oh, it's Edward.
Yes, my voice is small like a lady.
Oh, this is Edward. Sorry. Thank you, Edward. I really appreciate. I thought I was having a conversation with Florence. Florence Onyango.
Okay. I'm Edward Kanda.
Oh, you're Edward. You're also in the area of climate change?
Yeah, climate change and urban forestry.
Ah, that is nice. Because if I'm not wrong, there's another participant called Florence Onyango. If it is the Florence I know or I have met, she's also on climate change, issues to do with climate change.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know whether she's in the forum.
Okay.
Florence, are you in the forum? Are you comfortable enough to unmute and share with us your experiences? Okay. So anyway, I think Florence is not here. And thank you so much. My previous engager, you said you're Kadenge, right? Edward, you're
from Ghana.
Edward from Ghana.
Yeah. Yes.
Or Edward Kanda.
Yes.
That is great, Edward. I think I need to look into what you have done after this. Maybe we can share contacts, and then
Okay.
we can see how better to engage in more of the writing on climate change. It's an area I actually have a lot of interest in, and it's an area we could help you or support you even grow better. But congratulations for what you're doing.
Yeah, currently what the research I'm into is how plants or urban forestry help people to learn, especially in the basic schools. There are certain schools they are not planted over there. There are certain schools they are planted, and we want to see how learning plants in our environment impact on the learning. We see result so that we can educate people to start planting in their environment. I'm targeting basic school, second cycle, and tertiary institutions. So that is my project online now.
Oh, great. Then this class is really, really going to be useful for you.
Yeah.
All right. Then let us assume that the others are either not near their machines or basically are not shy to share their experiences. And so basically, I will start with a general introduction of what AIDS are. And I think I already did this, and we said that, we said, sorry, I'm having interruptions on the screen as I get to admit.
Okay.
So when you see it flicker, just be patient.
I'm sorry, Dr. Grace, but your voice is really low. Your volume is low.
My voice is low.
Not yours, Dr. Grace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Is it better or not yet?
It's better now.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we're looking at what op-eds are. Perhaps, Kevin, I see whether you can be able to support me with admitting the audience. But we are saying that an op-ed is basically a narrative that represents the writer's opinion or thoughts on an issue. This may look very basic, but it is actually very important. And when we talk about representing the writer's opinion, please note, it is not proving the writer's opinion, or it is not judging the writer's opinion. It is actually representing or presenting your opinion to the public. I think I said this before, and I hope it doesn't tire you to hear this, that this is the basic reason why many of us will publish very many science papers and have great ideas and projects to publish to non-science audience and end up never doing it. I always joke that when I was doing my master's in science communication, we were having a course on publishing science matter to non-scientists, and we were given different forums where we were supposed to publish, and that was going to take for our credits, and it was going to determine whether sorry, you eventually graduated, because basically it would affect your credit. And even after 3 years of training, it is sad to note that more than half of my classmates did not graduate because they did not meet the threshold that was set for that particular unit. And why is it sad and regrettable? It's because these are people who are not taking 2 days training like you. They're actually taking a 3 years, very intense kind of training. And why it is even more concerning is that that course was actually cut out for researchers. So most of us in the course were actually hard science researchers. And yet, as much as most of us were researchers and we had a 3 years, very intense training, majority did not make to still meet that threshold or the threshold that was set. Why? Because wanting to publish is one thing, actually publishing is another. And I can assure you, even I got stuck for quite some time before I could have something that was publishable, because we were set on the newspapers that we could publish, very highly rated papers, and different other forums where we were supposed to publish different kinds of materials. And all these were very high ranked kind of areas or forums. Therefore, you needed to have a very thorough job done before you could get your paper published. And I can assure you where I got stuck for the longest time, and what I still believe makes us not be able to break through with publishing, as much as we have a lot of desire. Even here at TCC, we've really been training a lot of people, but not as many as we would like to see actually end up publishing. And point number one is what keeps us off. I dwelt so much on it when I was starting, but for the new people who joined, or for the people who joined us later, this was the discourse that we had. Since we are researchers, right from our training, we have been trained to prove ourselves worth the salt. So we have been trained to publish very detailed content with a lot of data, a lot of verifications, and basically it's like everything we publish has gone through a lot of sieving and a lot of proving. And when we go with that attitude to publishing for non-science audience, it now becomes very tricky because this is a whole different ball game. So allow me to emphasize it again, that you're coming from a point where the people already trust you. I used an example of you walking to your doctor's room. You don't ask them for the academic papers. You believe if they are there, they are qualified. They've gone through interviews that have actually qualified them. So you're not going there to judge their qualification. You're going there to someone who knows what they are doing to get help. And that is the same attitude and approach that the general public has towards them. By the time they are reading your their newspaper article, you don't need to prove who you are. They already know that by the time you got considered to actually publish that paper, someone did a background check on the byline. What someone was saying at the end, there is always a line on the names of the writer and who they are and what they do and why they are qualified to write that newspaper article, in short. They want to believe that someone has done their due diligence They want to believe that someone has read through your article and has actually approved it for publishing. So the bigger work of proving yourself has already been done. You don't have to do it again. Just go on, tell us what your opinion is, represent your opinion and thought very simply, very directly, and without the burden of wanting to prove who you are. Remember when we are starting, we said, please separate yourself from your articles. This is not, and I know most of the people, there's a student I trained for quite some time, and he kept asking me, but Grace, I'm a researcher, I'm a lecturer. How are my colleagues going to marry who I am with the kind of papers I am writing, articles I am writing? Because for me, they are so simplistic. And I'm like, that is exactly what tells you that you have started writing. When your articles are so simplistic that they make no much sense to your science folk. Actually, not that they make no sense. They do not intrigue a lot of interest to your science folk. Because when you're writing to non-science and you still want to communicate to your colleagues who are in science, then you're mixing audience. You're mixing audience. It's like a politician in Kenya going to campaign in Uganda. You are mixing audience. It's not gonna go down well. If you're a politician, you have to ask yourself, who am I campaigning to? What is my audience? What are the needs of my audience? And for that day, don't even dwell on the national issues unless you're campaigning on the national television. If you're on the ground campaigning on a particular province or a particular county or a particular village, you need to go down to the needs of those people you're talking to without thinking, this matter is going to be published in the national television. What are the people from other provinces not going to feel left out and all that? Those are not your audience for that message. So what I usually encourage us is, please be humble enough to pick a small population and give them a very simplified message which comes from your thoughts and your opinion. It's the only way you start writing. Otherwise, if you start writing with a mixed audience, that you're speaking to the rural folk, but at the same time, you still want to earn the respect of your research colleagues, you are mixing that audience and it is never going to go down well. So just focus yourself that for now, my audience is not my research team. For now, my audience is maybe I've heard very many of us are in the health sector. It is the young women of childbearing age. And basically my message is the importance of a balanced diet during pregnancy. So those are the people who I want to reach out to. And this is the message I want to reach out to them with. So I will not belabor myself with a lot of data and a lot of proving myself. So you really need to have your audience cut out, and you need to get a message that speaks directly. Remember, we talked about the message being very direct and tied to your key message. If your key message is the importance of eating a balanced diet during pregnancy for healthy babies, then stick to that. So what we are saying here is that your writing is basically not a proof of who you are, but an opinion of something that you are already qualified to give. Because by the fact that you're in that field, you're qualified to give an opinion. The second thing is that you need to tell yourself that the narratives aim to raising awareness about a particular topic or persuading others to a certain call to action or call or action. All right. So basically, this is what we have been saying. We are not here to prove yourself. You're here to raise awareness. Remember, the people you're discussing this matter with either know the information, but they are not heeding to it, like the example we are giving about hand washing. Everybody basically knows the importance of hand washing, but when it came to managing COVID, for example, we needed to be repeated to that narrative over and over again, so that we can be persuaded to actually buy to the call to action, or actually apply what we already know. So we are either persuading someone who already has the information but is not applying, or we are actually raising awareness to someone who doesn't have the information, and we are hoping that they can have the information and they can apply it. And that is why for all op-eds, they need to have a call to action. What is a call to action? A call to action is basically the take home, what we would call a take home in our lectures. What you want these people to basically do or remember or adopt, it's usually just one or two things. Remember, we talked about denoising. Do not try to give people 5 call to actions from one simple newspaper article, from an op-ed. It's going to be so noisy. If you want to give people 5 take-homes, then please consider doing a more lengthy piece, what we call a features. A features is lengthy. A features is illustrated. We'll be seeing about features sooner. A features is illustrated, but features are also harder to publish in the newspaper because they take in a lot of time. Unless you're a columnist, sorry, in the newspaper, it is a lot easier for you to publish an op-ed than to publish a feature. But a feature can carry a number of call to actions, not so an op-ed, because an op-ed is shorter. We are going to see it's actually just around 600 to 700 words. Some papers will actually, especially those who publish online versions, will even ask for op-eds that are as short as 500 words. Because again, the online versions may not want to be as long as the physical papers that we read. So they may want to do a lot more editing. Therefore, we do not have too much call to actions to pass within such a short narrative. Then the third point we are trying to make is that op-eds are usually written by or on behalf of a highly qualified specialist on the subject matter. And that is why we are saying you don't have to keep proving yourself. By the time you're submitting an op-ed, the editorial team will always catch up and make sure that you're actually qualified to give that op-ed. And that is why they will always have the byline, basically to, of course, give the audience a way of reaching you, of knowing you better, but also of giving validation that this is not just a layman writing this. This is someone who is actually, that is very highly qualified. And that is why we see most op-eds are written by invitation. Many of us will get invitation from the media houses to do op-eds once they get to know you and they get to know what your area of expertise is. We have said that op-eds are usually 600 to 700 words, but it depends with the publisher and the channel. And it also depends with the platform where it is being published. So sometimes we'll have shorter op-eds, especially when we are having the online versions of the publications. Right. How do we go on writing an op-ed? First, we need to do a thorough preparation of what we call the head or a header. A header basically means you need to ask yourself, what am I dwelling on? What are the call to actions? Who are my audience? Why is this topic important? Remember, we talked about timing. Why is this the best time to write this topic? Second, we know that you know your topic very well, but when you're writing an op-ed, You also need to capture as much varied opinions as possible. Now, this is not a letter to the editor, sorry. So we are not actually arguing out a discourse. Letters to the editor mostly are arguing out a discourse. Op-eds are not arguing out a discourse. So you do not necessarily need to present too much of what the opposing opinions have to say about your writing. Of course, we want to hear a bit of it, but not as much as we want to put in the features and in the letters to the editor. The reason being that we are not, like I said, sorry, we are not arguing out a discourse. We are putting forth a discourse. However, we need to capture as much as other alternative opinions that are agreeable. Remember, this is your opinion, but that are agreeable to your opinion as much as possible. That is why we are saying it is your area, but please research more widely. For example, ask yourself, has someone else published on this recently in the same newspaper? Because if we had someone publish on the same, like maybe on the same a few days before, then it is less likely that you are going to be published. That is one. Two, did someone recently publish a dissenting opinion on the same? Because again, science rarely agrees. If someone has published a dissenting opinion, then you may want to consider actually putting forth now a discourse as opposed to actually now writing an op-ed. Third, you need to draft ahead. This one I know, we all know that you don't sit down and write, that you need actually to draft out your ideas before you develop the message that you're passing around, passing through, sorry. Basically, the reason is just to help you tie together your knowledge, tie together your facts, and tie together the flow of your message. Because often when you draft, what would be considered a fine copy, then you struggle a lot with editing fine copies. And that is one of the areas that we struggle with as writers, mostly because, we always have the writer's block. When you're writing op-eds, most of the times you'll only write, and then the media houses want to give you an opportunity to be a columnist, which means you need to put forth a number of articles every other time. Sometimes you're going through a writer's block. So you keep postponing the writing until the deadline is nearly here, the publish, dead by, and you end up struggling a lot. And that is what we always advise. If you have an idea of something that you want to write about, please draft it today. Draft it when it is fresh. And then you can do the editing much later, because editing is a lot easier. Even when you're not in the right mood to write, it is always easier to edit than to start pushing yourself to write something when really it is not fresh up your mind. Then the fourth point we always like putting up across is write like a pro. Basically, this is calling on you to have confidence in who you are and what your writing language and skills are. Often, you see, like when I started, I'll always want to go through the class and get to know who are your favorite writers. What op-eds have you read and they have really caught your attention? And perhaps they were not even in your area of study or your area of science interest. Why did they catch your interest? I know we've not had a lot of a discussion on that today. It's something I would have really loved that we do, but we did not have that discussion. I would actually encourage you to look at a few op-eds and ask yourself, why do I like this op-ed? You realize that every writer has their own writing style. And the worst thing that you will ever do is if you try to compare yourself with a given writer. Please never compare yourself with a given writer, because your style may not be their style. Just be confident that your style is fine. And as your readership, you keep building readership, then you're going to actually, or following, then you're actually going to grow more confident of your writing, and you're going to adopt that as your writing style, because it is usually as unique as your fingerprint. How you write, nobody else will probably write like in the entire universe. There's always going to be a language and a sentence structure and a way of passing down imagination that is very unique to you. So don't write and then ask yourself, how would so-and-so write this? Or read so-and-so's writing and then start marking yours against his or hers. It's likely not to take you very far. So be confident of yourself and write like you. Last is pre-edit. Before you send this out for publishing, of course, there's gonna be a lot of editing that will happen in the media house. However, to up your chances of your being published, you need to pre-edit yourself. Edit in the language that you have used. Make sure it is actually as simple as possible. Eliminate the jargons, eliminate the acronyms, eliminate the assumptions that scientists make of using very complex languages. It is something, sentence structures, it is something that I struggle with even to date. Even after years of publishing, I can assure you, I have to really pre-edit my work and check on my language. I have the researcher in me, and the researcher in me is very disciplined in oral communication. But when it comes to sorry for that. But when it comes to actually writing, publishing, I will always find the researcher in me rearing her head. I'll always end up with a bit of complex sentences, which I now have to re-edit before I even send for editing. But as you continue writing, you'll learn more of your flaws. Some of them are very easy to address. Many of them, you will just have to accept them and keep working on them with time. Because you can imagine, if I have been writing for more than 15 years now, and I'm still struggling, then I can assure you there are some areas that there are some bugs that you'll not deal with right away. They are going to take time, but the good thing is that you get good enough to call them out on your own. You can actually read your work and you're like, no, I need to redo this. I need to redo this sentence structure and all that. So once you can be able to do it on your own, then it becomes a plus, because you don't have to give a lot of work to the editorial team, and therefore your work can get easily published. Right. So I'm going to take 2 questions and then take a few minutes nature break for all of us, maybe 10 minutes, and then we will come back to make a conclusion on this, agree on the assignments. And then after I have received your assignment, I'll be able to now go down to marking it and discussing it with all of us. So could we please have just 3 questions? We haven't gone into the actual writing, but I want, before we go into the actual writing, that we are all on the same page. and that if there are any questions, I can address them so that I know what to address right now and what to address as we go through the process of writing, which will take up about 30 minutes after the break. Thank you. 2 or 3 questions? Again, no protocol, just unmute and ask. Could be questions, it could be comment, it could be observation, it could be anything. Is it possible to please do it without me having to motivate you?
Good afternoon, I'm Benta. You can hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
please. There's a bit of an echo at the back, but it's okay. We can hear you. Just proceed if you're not able to control.
Yeah, I asked, how do you ensure that you completely eliminate the jargon and you are still able to communicate, especially like to the, of course, the non-scientists, and like you're communicating very clearly and no jargons, yet you're a scientist, you're an engineer, and you, in your message, it's embedded all these technical words.
Thank you very much. What I can do is give you tips on how to do that, but there is no straight way of teaching you how to eliminate jargon. Basically, you get better at it with time, but I will give you tips as we go into the actual writing on how to actually eliminate jargons. But like I said, you're going to get better at it with time. So don't be too harsh on yourself. Like, don't try to get perfect today. As long as you can draft something today, you can write something better tomorrow, and it gets easier with time. But when we go into the actual writing after the break, I'll be able to give you a few tips on how to address that. Okay. Anybody else, kindly? I want to hear from 2 gentlemen. Elias Muhumuza. I want to believe you're a man, so please represent your folk. I just judged from your name. I'm not so sure. Elias Muhumuza. And then Eric Okari. Eric Okari, please get ready. This class has been particularly difficult to get them to talk. I don't know what the problem could be.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grace, for such a wonderful presentation. Can I go ahead?
Please do.
Yes. Yeah, I'm interested in knowing much more about an op-ed because you've said it's a narrative that presents the writer's opinion or thoughts on an issue. Is that right?
Yes, please.
Yes. I just wanted to know if then I have an idea. Can it be an op-ed? because what is so interesting here is you said an opinion or a thought, and you continue to say op-eds are usually written on behalf of a highly qualified specialist on a certain subject. So an idea or a thought or an opinion, so when you link it to a qualified or a subject matter, don't you think it's becoming much more broader?
Thank you very much for that. I see where maybe I may not have explained very clearly. When I said is written by or on behalf of, is because amongst us, there are people like me who will be writing opinion editorials, not for me, but for my audience. Some of us are going to take up communication jobs for research institutes, and as the communication experts, we will be expected to take up an idea or an opinion from our colleagues and turn it into an op-ed for them, as what we do on a day-to-day job. However, there are others who will be writing their own op-eds, meaning that you already a qualified expertise in that area, and you're not writing on behalf of someone else. You are writing, you're writing for your own. By writing for your own, I mean that the byline, you see that byline that is below there, it is by you, okay? Who am I speaking with? Sorry, your name didn't show up on the screen.
Yes, my name is Mr. Dick again, Dick from Botswana.
Okay. Allow me not to attempt pronouncing your name. I don't want to pronounce your name wrongly, but assuming that your name is now Bae, then your name, researcher in this institute or lecturer at this institute, or maybe a doctor in this area of study. That is the byline. You'll always see it down there. Okay, so if it is you who was writing it for yourself, then it goes without saying that you're an expert in your own right. That is why you're writing this opinion, because you're qualified to give an opinion. What we mean is what we mean by the writer being a qualified person in that area is that, for example, being a vet, I may not want to write an op-ed on human medicine, and the vice versa is true. The two are very closely related, but you do not want to write to women about how to manage their diet during pregnancy, and the byline there is that of a veterinary doctor. Because you're an expert, yes, you could know a lot about managing pregnancies, because I mean, there isn't so much of a difference between, okay, of course there is a difference, but it's not a completely different world, how you'll manage a pregnancy in some of the animals and how you'll manage a pregnancy in some of, in human beings. So you may have an idea or two, but that doesn't give you, allow me to use a word that is not quite the correct one, but very close, doesn't give you the moral authority to draft an op-ed on how women can best manage their pregnancy. Better still, you could be a doctor, a human doctor, but you're a general practitioner. You do not want to venture into the issue of managing a pregnancy diet during pregnancy for women. You want to leave that either to a gyna or to a nutritionist. Okay, so that is why we are saying when you are drafting, an op-ed, please check to limit the head to a subject that you're very, very well conversant with when it comes to studies, when it comes to your training. I'll give an example of politics. We all have our opinion when it comes to politics, but unless you are a trained person or expert in political science or anything that has to do with politics, you do not want to start writing op-eds on a political matter. I know I have jumped out of science issues. Well, politics is also known to be a science, but we are mostly dealing with hard science. But that is basically what I meant. Stick to your area of expertise. And if you're writing on behalf of someone else, like some of us often do, then make sure that that someone else is actually very qualified to give that opinion. I don't know whether I have made the clarification right.
Okay, doctor. My main worry here, not a worry, in fact, my suggestion, I don't know if it's a suggestion or just a comment. As you all know, there was this COVID-19 that came out, that spread of COVID, and there were so many research that were said. And some people were saying this research is not right. Some were saying there were that conflict of interest when it comes to researching about COVID-19, to an extent that even in African countries, in terms of to do research about medicine, they ended up saying the European people, they're the ones who want to sell medicine. So I mean, like in terms of, let's say there is a pandemic like COVID that came. So when are you going to find time to research widely and prepare ahead? Because something that just came, and maybe drafting ahead and pre-editing a lot. So I just wanted to find out.
Thank you again for that follow-up question. The challenge of the challenge of publishing science is that science rarely agrees, and I think that is something we all agree on. That is why we have, for example, again, allow me to use the field of medicine. We have the conventional medicine, we have the non-conventional medicine, we have people who believe in nature healing, we have others who believe in medicinal healing. And therefore, research is never, science is never likely to agree. And I think that is the beauty of science. And I think I understand what you mean. First is, when do you get to research what all others have to say? But remember, I pointed out a disclaimer there that since science will never totally agree, and we are not writing a discourse is basically where we are arguing out what someone else wrote. It's also allowed in the newspapers, mostly coming up as letters to the editor. Since you're not necessarily writing a discourse in response to another scientist, you are actually free to write what you believe in, because the world out there is looking for as many lines of thoughts as possible for them to decide. For instance, when we are dealing with COVID, there are those who want to hear about vaccines, how to get through COVID by getting vaccinated. There are also those of us who want to hear about how best we can navigate the turmoil of COVID without the vaccine. And you know what? They are right to have all the kinds of information. And that is why a newspaper is not a research journal. For a research journal, you will not publish something that the peer reviewers do not agree with. But newspapers do not quite work like peer-reviewed journals. Newspapers are actually encouraging as much opinions as possible because the world deserves those opinions. And that is why it is an opinion. It is not a recommendation. It is an opinion. So it doesn't have to agree with, all your peers must not agree. As long as your opinion is agreeable to your peers, to your close peers. For example, if you believe in alternative medicine, there are other peers who also believe in alternative medicine and have reviewed your work and actually agree with it. However, there are other peers who are still in medicine but don't believe in alternative medicine. So you must not necessarily look for areas where the two agree because there may be very few. Go ahead and publish your opinion. As long as scientifically it is backed up, you owe the world your opinion. As long as it is scientifically sound and scientifically backed up with data that you believe is verifiable. But please don't publish the data into the op-ed. As long as you have it somewhere, you can pull it through, you believe it is clean, you believe it is well done, please go ahead and share your opinion. Look at it more like a lecture opportunity. You don't always lecture on what has really been approved by so many journals, no. So just let the world know what your opinion is. When do you prepare ahead? When do you draft? Drafting basically doesn't mean that you have to do it 2 weeks ahead or 1 month ahead. Drafting means you could do it today and edit it tomorrow. The reason why we say you need to pre-draft is because when you are writing, you're writing with a lot of consciousness. And often when you edit with what you have written very fresh in your mind. So what happens is that you're likely to miss out some mistakes you made, because when you're editing, you'll not be editing content off the paper, you'll be editing content off your mind, because your mind is still very fresh with what you have written. So you'll be telling yourself that you're actually editing what you have written, whereas in reality, you'll be editing what is coming off your mind. And you realize that many times you miss out very, very obvious typos and very obvious mistakes. It's just the way the human mind works. That's why we usually say, please don't write and submit unless there is no other way. Write, sleep over it, pick it up and edit it. If you need to write and submit, then please write, but give someone else to run through it and edit it for you, or pick up areas that they feel maybe you need to edit. The longer you take with your work, the better. But again, when we go to publishing, we realize that the deadlines are very, very, very close. So you either want to have a colleague whom you partner with when it comes to editing your work, or you want to do your work at least a day or two before, and then edit it and submit it on time. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you really need to take a very long time between preparing, drafting, editing, and submitting. I hope I have answered you.
Yes, Doc, thank you so much for such a beautiful answer.
All right, I'm glad I was of help. I could take 1 or 2 more questions. And then
Excuse me, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, this is Alison from Uganda. Thank you very much for taking us through how to write an op-ed. I have always been seeing op-eds on newspapers, and they usually call them columns. And when you talk of the word count being between 600 to 700 or even less. In most cases, I find when I look at, though I have not counted the words, some of the writings in those columns seem to be less than 300 or 200 even words. I don't know, the conditions prescribed by the newspaper or the publication, or it is a general issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alison, for that question. My answer is twofold. One, it could be that the column you're talking about is actually a letter to the editor. Those ones are usually a lot shorter. It could also be that you are referring on to an online publication. Online publications, I had pointed out, will always make the op-eds a lot shorter. Reason being, it is scientifically proven that people the human eye is more comfortable reading on paper than reading on screen. Therefore, many people will not be comfortable reading very lengthy things on the screen. I know for us who are researchers and who actually have to read and read and read, our eyes have adjusted. So you can actually read a whole book on the screen. But for others who are not adjusted, and those are the majority of the people out here, to reading a lot of lengthy materials on the screen, the eyes tire a lot, and we don't want to read lengthy. Actually, the concentration span on the screen is taken scientifically to be 8 minutes. So anything for adults, that is. So anything that is longer than 8 minutes either needs to be entertaining, not either, needs to be entertaining, because entertainment takes lesser of brain cell energy. Therefore, people can go on a lot longer. That is why you can watch a movie for over 2 hours, but it really becomes difficult to read more than 20 pages of a book continuously. Or it takes a lot more energy on when you're reading it on screen. So if it is not entertainment, then we'd rather not keep it too long. That is why most of the online journals will edit their online publications for length, basically just to keep it a lot shorter. So it could be either of the two. Either that was not an op-ed, or it was an op-ed published in an online forum, an online newspaper. If you could clarify that, just look at a few, clarify. If you see any that doesn't basically fit any of the two, please take a snapshot, send it to me. I'm going to be able to advise whether it is an op-ed, and if it is an op-ed, on what, and is it on a newspaper, not a magazine per se? Is it on a newspaper? And if it is on a newspaper, is it physical or online? And then I'll be able to advise on that. But the editorial standards is that at least 600 to 700 for physical newspapers or for physical paper. But 550 plus or minus 10% is always allowed.
Do you have any sample of the op-ed so we could maybe see what you're talking about, Doc? Because some of us, we are 9 scientists.
Thank you, Doc. Yes, of course, I do have pretty and many op-eds. However, I usually don't like sharing my own op-eds because I'll be giving you assignments in a short while. One of the things that I'll be assigning you is to go into a newspaper and pull out an op-ed so that you can also learn through, you can also see the different types of writings because newspapers are not made of op-eds. We only have maybe an op-ed or 2 per newspaper. So we need to actually familiarize ourselves with what op-eds are by looking at different writings and seeing whether they actually lie into what we would call an op-ed. So I am basically preempting the assignment, but one of the assignments will be, please grab a newspaper, pull out that which you think is an op-ed or believe it's an op-ed, go through it. There are a few areas that I'll ask you to look at. And then after that, we will draft one on our own and then we'll share it tomorrow. If it is not, if you'll end up picking something that is an op-ed, still it is fine. It is still a learning process, but we learn better that way than me sharing an op-ed and telling you, here's an example of an op-ed. So sorry if that is not what you were expecting, but that is how I find learning made more impactful. All right, I see like there's a hand lifted up.
Yes, just to clarify that the assignment is to find a newspaper and try to find an op-ed in it.
Part of the assignment. Let me not preempt until I go to the to the assignment area, but that is part of the assignment. I just preempted it. Answer our colleague. All right, then I see we are at 27 minutes past 12 East African time. Could we please take just 5 minutes breather and come, or about 5 minutes. Let's come back at 35 minutes past 12, and then I'll be able to go through the process of writing an op-ed. We have already discussed so much, so I'm sure whatever we'll be discussing here is just like laying more detail to it, and then we'll go to the assignment, and then I'll allow us to break for the day. And thank you for keeping it here and for keeping it interactive. Thank you. Is 35 past okay for all of us? Speak for yourself. Is 35 minutes past okay?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. See you then. Our session, the last session for the day. I believe I have done most of the explanation, but still it is really good to see how to write an op-ed now practically. The two rules that I would like to send to you is that an op-ed follows these two rules. One is that an op-ed uses an inverted pyramid. Basically, when we are doing science writing, we use the normal pyramid kind of system, where we start with very little information and then go building on it, just typically how a pyramid looks, so that it is heaviest at the bottom. However, when we are writing for non-science communication, non-scientist audience, part of it being through op-eds, we want to use an inverted pyramid. An inverted pyramid is where we start by giving as much information about what we are talking about as possible within the first few paragraphs, and then slowly narrowing it down to just basically conclude on the call to action or give directions on the call to action, maybe who to call, how to call, when to call, or what to do. Call to action basically could be anything. Basically, a proper call to action, forgive me for those who are not in the medicine world, I have a tendency to keep using medicine world, is like, you see when we say when to see a doctor after you have explained about signs of a heart attack and all that, and how to manage one and how to prevent one, and then you go to when do you really need to see a doctor, and then you give those instructions. That is basically what we would in layman call to action. What do you need to do? When do you need to do it? And how will you do it? That is basically one of the things that we must always achieve with communicating to non-scientist audience. And now that inverted pyramid is not complete until it has the 5 W's and H. We were able to talk about the 5 W's and the H. Now, the lead, let me just, sorry, I remember there are a few of us who joined us after I had already discussed the 5 W's and the H, so let me not ignore that. The 5 W's are actually basically who. The 5 W, the first W starts with who. We need to know who did what. The second one is what was done by who, when, where, wait, who or what did, when, where, and then the how. So once you have gone through your writing, you need to ask yourself, are my 5 W's covered? Have I covered who I am talking about? Have I covered what they did, when they did it, where they did it? Have I also covered the how? The H is now there, the how. I believe I explained that earlier on, so I will not belabor on it. And it is something that you can easily get online on any materials on non-science communication. Let us go to the broader part of the communication, of the writing of the op-ed. I will just brush through because you'll be able to grab more when you are looking at the op-eds. You realize that an op-ed will always be led with a very heavily weighted paragraph, first paragraph. It's what we actually call the lead. The lead is usually the heaviest. Remember, we've just said that we use an inverted pyramid. Yes, an inverted pyramid is basically heaviest at the top. So it is the first paragraph, the lead paragraph, that actually carries most of the information that is going to be discussed in the op-ed. And that is where the 5 W's and the H will basically be featured on. Although details of the same are also going to be discussed down the op-ed. But all of them must be fitted, at least an aspect of them must go into the lead paragraph. And now, second part of the assignment will also be identifying the 5 W's and the H in your lead paragraph on the op-ed that you'll have picked up. So we say the purpose of the main purpose of a lead paragraph is basically to introduce the person who is reading what you are writing about, basically proving to them that it is worth their time. And by proving to them it is worth their time, you're not going to successfully do it unless you employ ways of actually grabbing their attention, because you cannot prove to them that it is worth their time unless you first grab their attention. The second thing is that you have to start with an interesting story or example that basically draws their attention. Because if you start with a dull introduction, of course, nobody will want to go down and read down what is there. And that is why you find that most of us, when we are writing for the media, we like giving very sensational topic, not sensational headings. Basically, it is just to grab your attention. Because if you fail in grabbing your reader's attention, then you have lost that reader. Who are you writing for? Okay. Then the second part is now the narrowing part of the pyramid, which again starts with slightly being heavy, but goes getting lighter. And that is the body of the op-ed. Most of us will not struggle with that, but we will remember that in the introduction, we said that the body also includes the conclusion. The body is basically building on the take-homes. And remember, we have said the take-homes or the call to action will basically be summarized at the very end of the discussion, but we need to keep building on those call to actions. So the body will always be building up on the particular call to action. Then we are saying conclude as you started. Conclude by taking your argument a step further, and then make sure you conclude with a punch. You remember when we were saying, like, for example, when do you need to see a doctor? It should be as captivating as when you started. How you started with a lot of captivating language is how you must also deliver there to do action with a very captivating language. Because basically, if people read everything, but they did not do what you asked them to do or change where you recommended that they change, then you have not been very effective, right? And that is what we are trying to assume. Okay, crafting a message. How do you start? All right, how do you start? That is the biggest point. I think we have gone through it, but I would like to hear what how most of you will go on crafting their messages, because you have to start somewhere. How did we say that you should start? Please, someone unmute. Okay, we said start by first doing research about what you're publishing. Do a little bit of research on what you intend to publish, because of course you start with an idea, but you need to build on that idea by building up, by building out a bit of research. For example, knowing what has been published of late, so that you may not want to continue publishing what was published, but you may want to build up on what was published. What has been published of late? What was the dialogue around what was published? Were there some questions that came out of what was published that can actually guide you on what to publish about, as opposed to what you wanted to publish? For instance, you may have published on the importance of diet for pregnant women, just to keep to the example I have been using. And then that is what you intended to publish, and that was your opinion. But then when you're researching, you realize, oh, a colleague actually did publish that about 2 weeks ago. You may not therefore want to go and publish on the same, because they'll have a lot of repetition. And anyway, you're just lessening your chances of being published. However, you can read through that discourse and see what came up of it. For instance, you could see there could have been a lot of questions about supplements. Are supplements a good way of doing it, or should we be eating healthy? I mean, natural food and all that. Are processed foods okay? You know, if it's supplements, what supplements are best and all that. You could pick up an issue that actually drew a lot of attention from the people and come up with a message out of that. So that instead of publishing on the role of balanced diet or importance of balanced diet for pregnant women, now you dwell on, for example, the consumption of supplements during your pregnancy. If you're a pro-supplement, remember we agreed that science will never agree. So as much as we are researchers, there are those who are pro-supplement, there are those who are anti-supplement. There are those who will say, no, don't take supplements, eat natural, like supplement natural. Others will go like, that may not be adequate, so you may need supplements. Science really never agrees. And like we said, the world, you owe the world your opinion, not your fellow researchers. So just whether you're pro-supplements or anti-supplements or pro-nature, then please go on and publish what your opinion on based on that. Okay. And this comes also answers in part, how do you come up with a subject matter? Because that is also how you decide what subject you are actually going to cover as you do more of your research. Then, like we said, the moment you have said, this is what I'm going to do, while it is fresh in your mind, please do a draft. It actually may be on point forms, but never slip over an issue. Never decide I'm going to write on the role of supplements for pregnant women and then go to bed and wake up to write. I have always found it to be more efficient and more effective if you do a draft. Well, the information is actually very fresh on your mind. Draft something How detailed it is will depend on how much time you have at hand, but draft something when the topic is still very fresh in your mind. Okay, we have already discussed this, how to track the news and how to jump for opportunities, but there are reminders to this. As much as we want to jump onto the opportunities, remember we said timing is critical. You remember when we were talking about, for example, discussing matters of cancer, for example, coming up with podcast materials on cancer when we have just suddenly lost a prominent person who is actually affecting very many people. The content could be great, but the timing may not be critical. So remember what we talked about timing. Again, we also talked about the first place at the media that we want to publish our materials, either when we have had the chance to cultivate the traffic or when the traffic is already flowing, so that we don't start writing about how to prevent cholera, like the example I gave, while only one case has been reported, and when the public is really not into listening to things about cholera prevention and all that. That is what we are called to do ethically as scientists. We start controlling it as soon as possible, but that may not work out well when it comes to our audience, because they're never taking it serious until the house is burning. So we are saying, follow the trends, follow the news, see the opportunities you can jump into, but also remember timing is critical. All right. How about the trends and op-eds? How do the two marry? When we are talking about trends, we are basically saying, this is what the people are listening to, this is what the people are talking about. And I gave an example here, that if you're writing about nutrition, you could start off by tapping into the ongoing fast on the same. Like maybe you don't have a particular idea you want to write about. You're a nutritionist. You have 1,000 things you could write about, but none seems to be standing out for you at the point where you want to write. So how do you want to go about it? Go into the media, go into social media, go into the mainstream media, see what really people are really talking about. There's always this fast. Sometimes it's Uji power. I don't know the pros and cons. Some are for pro Uji power, others are for those who know what Uji power is, others are supplements, others are certain juices. Maybe we're being told, take a carrot, a glass of carrot juice every day to detox. Others are saying, take a glass of spinach. There's always a fast, by the way. There's always a fast on something. So if that is your area of expertise, then you can look at what the fast is about, and then you can actually come up with an educative material based on that fast. And because the fast is already there, people are actually going to listen to you. Remember, you're an expert. So if you're saying carrot juice is great for, vitamin and all that, but it is really not a detox item, I'm not saying it is not. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just giving an example. That is an expert, you say, well, it will give you a lot of vitamins and carotenoids and all that, which will make your skin great and all that, but really it will not play a part in a detox system. Then who are we? We're going to listen because you're an expert. We are not. But irrespective of what the people are fussing about on social media, if you just give an educated or a more informed opinion, you have made this world a better place. So it is also a way of giving you the motivation to write, like correcting wrong notion out there in the public, which is really happening a lot, especially in this day and age of social media. People who are not qualified to give opinions are all over giving opinions just because they have followers. But it is our time now as scientists to also give a very balanced and a very educated opinion also to the same audience, so that at least we play a better role in making this world a better place. Someone asked, how do you write effectively? Basically, how do you get your point across effectively? Here is your answer. First, choose your battle. What do you mean by choose your battle? There is so much to write. Like, let me go back maybe as a health, if you're a nutritionist and you want to write on something, you may actually realize even on the issue of whether to consume, whether to use supplements when you're expectant, or for expectant mothers, whether to use supplements or not. Even if you are pro supplements, you can still write about all the supplements that exist. You will have to still pick a few supplements that are critical and promote those ones. And maybe those that people shouldn't take and promote those ones. So because the science world is very broad, remember we discussed this at the beginning, please pick one single point. One. It is a very big challenge for us as researchers, because basically we publish materials with like 5-6 points to make. Just make one point. And the point could be, supplements are great, but calcium, iron are the best. People tend to take boron, but it is really not important for you and the baby at that point. I actually don't think whether there's a boron supplement. I'm just talking, I'm just sharing as a layman, you know, because that is not my area of expertise. But tell us what is best and what is not. And that's it. Don't go too much into the details, lest you make it too long or you lose us into the discussion. Okay. The key is persuasiveness. Remember, we discussed this. You're not here to convince us that you actually know what you're writing about. So don't make the discussion too lengthy and too much conflicting, trying to like, you know, like write off your peers who do not necessarily agree with your point of view. It will always be like that. Please spare that for sharing through the letters to the editor. But when it comes to opinion, this is your opinion. This is your opinion. You may want to touch a bit of other conflicting opinion, but don't dwell on it. This is your opinion, and that is what we want to hear. But starting off, also, most of us find that starting off with a very brief critique about a dissenting opinion will also get pro and anti readers very interested in your writing, because it tells them that you're giving them a balanced view. For example, you could be pro supplements, but you know that there's a big part of us who are anti-supplement. So you may want to start a discourse on why some of us believe that supplements are not the best during pregnancy, and why for you, you believe otherwise, and why for you, you recommend this particular supplement. Still, that is allowed. But remember, do not dwell on do not dwell on the dissenting opinions. All right, it is your opinion we want to hear. All right, how do you get persuasive? Speak what your audience wants to hear. That is why we are keeping on repeating that you need to know where the heart of your audience is. Do a simple research. 2, give it an emotional appeal. Remember, we discussed this when we were starting, that you actually need to get the emotions of your readers at the right timing. So let them know that you're not speaking it as an outsider, or you're not putting forth their opinion as an outsider. It's something that actually concerns you. Sorry again for my screen. It is something that concerns you, and you're actually putting up the opinion because you care. All right. Then we talked about speaking to their hearts first and then their minds. That again is the appeal. You remember we said you can also you can actually fetch an emotional appeal. I do not encourage too much of using fear appeal in op-eds. It doesn't often fetch very good results, but it is good for priming. It is good. It is a good way of media priming for an op-ed. or for an open discussion. Maybe on TV or something, they will actually use that as a priming kind of tactic. But I do not actually encourage it a lot. But if you're going into something like verbal discussions, maybe you're having your live shows, or you're having your your forum where you get to discuss issues one-on-one, then you can actually use the fear appeal. But remember to balance it out. Don't scare people of the topic. Instead, give them just enough fear to listen other than jump out of the topic. All right. So useful tips in writing an op-ed, and that will actually help you as a writer. First, usually say showing is better than discussing. So paint it in color. What we mean by paint it in color is don't write in a scientific manner. When we say showing, doesn't necessarily mean using pictures. This may not fit very well for an op-ed. It could fit better in feature stories. But what we mean by this is that paint the picture in their mind. Painting the picture in the mind basically goes back to where we started, that you actually start by getting what the people want to hear, what you want to tell them, and telling it in as relevant language as possible, using most relevant explanations and examples and things that actually call very close to home, so that by the time you're discussing with them, you're not discussing with them a very new topic. And this is where we usually get it wrong as scientists, because for us as scientists, we are always running for new knowledge. We are always publishing papers on new knowledge. Everything we develop new knowledge, that is what we want to share with our fellow peers. However, it becomes very hard to write an op-ed on new knowledge. That one would actually fit better in maybe an op-ed. Say, for example, you have discovered, or in the point of research, you have discovered a reagent that is actually very good for treating drinking water. It's gonna be quite a job for you to write about that in an op-ed, because this is a very new area. This is a very new item. You may want to do it as a news item. You may not necessarily want to do it as an op-ed. What you could do an op-ed on the maybe controlling waterborne diseases, and how there are different types of basically treating water, and then you can now point or throw in that reagent that you have discovered. That is a very clever way of doing it. But if you want to say, I am marketing, or I am telling you about XYZ reagent, which is actually very good for treating water, it's actually not gonna come out very well in an op-ed, because you may not get the appeal that you're seeking on, in that most people will first be asking, what is a reagent? Why reagent? Why do I want to treat water? So if you start it right from the start, it's going to leave too many blanks, and that is not good for a writer. Then this one we already discussed, embrace your personal voice. Remember, we said every writer is unique as your fingerprint. Please do not try to write like someone else. It's okay if you feel drawn to write like someone, but do not be them. Learn from them, but be you. There will always be something that is different in your style of writing from even those that you really, really, really enjoy reading. I will not belabor on that. We already discussed that. The next thing is use short sentences and paragraphs. You remember when I was telling you that I always have to go back and re-edit my work for sentence, basically the modeling of my sentence, my way of writing. encourages a lot of complex modeling of the sentences. And it is very common to us who are science researchers. I think we are just taught to write in very complex sentences, and that this actually affects us, either us or creatives. People who are also very creative also struggle a lot with remodeling of their, simplifying their sentences. But we are saying, whatever you do, please make sure that when you edit, when you write, it's okay, write as yourself, but when you come to edit, re-edit your sentences to be very short sentences and very brief paragraphs. Usually your paragraphs shouldn't go more than 5 sentences. And your sentences ought to be relatively short. I mean, they shouldn't go, your paragraph shouldn't go beyond 5 or at least 5.5 lines. All right. We made a point here. This is especially important if you're to be published electronically. Basically, if you're to do it in a digital forum. Remember, we said we are not very good readers on electronic materials or platforms. So the eye is more comfortable with shorter, more brief sentences. Okay, where's my friend who was asking about jargons? Avoid jargon. Because you're talking to people who are not used to what you're writing about. So it may be a bit difficult for them, or it will be too heavy for them to keep on following on jargons. How do you do that? By avoiding jargon, basically I usually say, spell out the jargon. For example, if it is a cardiac arrest, cardiac arrest could be a jargon for heart failure. Just tell us it's heart failure or failing of the heart. Spell out what you're trying to say. If it is, for example, I wish we had time to run through a few jargons so that you can throw out a jargon. And then I would ask you, what does it mean? What does that word mean? And then you'll tell it to me. And then I'll say, okay, fine. Remove the jargon and write what it means. Instead of writing cardiac arrest, write heart failure. That one is a lot more understandable. How do you tell this is a jargon? If you see it underlined on Word, if Word doesn't recognize it easily, then it is definitely a jargon. So always run your writing in Word, and especially in a machine where you have not basically used to do your scientific writing. It really helps. But with time, if you see, you can start by having peer editors. They'll always ask you, point out your jargons, especially if it is someone who is not trained in your area, a layman. They will always just tell them, underline the words you don't understand. And then with time, you're gonna get better at them. Sorry, I'm having to rush through this because of time. And then we are saying, another way of getting your point across effectively is the use of active voice. Please do not report so much. Remember, this is your opinion. Use active voice. This is your opinion. This is you telling us. And even when you're writing for someone else, you write for them. Remember, we said you can write an op-ed on behalf of someone, but you write as them. You don't write in reported speech. So you write for them as though it is them who are telling the story. So always make sure to use active speech. Right. Then keep off needless rebuttals. Remember, we talked about you trying to prove a point and trying to, discredit people that you feel misrepresented facts because science never agrees. We said it doesn't go very well on op-eds. It doesn't hurt to point out something that you feel people tend to do and you don't agree with. For example, maybe you're anti-supplements for pregnant women. You don't have to dwell on it. Maybe just say, I know there's the area of research that really encourages consumption of supplements, but I would recommend otherwise because of 1, 2, 3. Remember, we're saying keep off the temptation to open fire. Just focus on what you're telling us. That is what is important. The rest people will decide for themselves. This is actually very tempting to do if you've done an op-ed and then a colleague has followed it up with a letter to the editor, basically discrediting your op-ed or the content of your op-ed or your opinion on the op-ed. It happens a lot because science never agrees. Science is like politics. They will basically never agree. So it's fine. But remember, they have their audience, you have your audience. Your audience are stuck with you. Move with your audience. Don't dwell so much on their audience. All right? Then the next is keep your credibility and balance. Basically, what you're saying is appreciate your opponents are also right and acknowledge their views. Because just because we don't agree doesn't mean you're entirely wrong. Okay, I think we have really dwelt on that. You'll allow me not to dwell on it too much, although it's important. And then we're saying, let your ending ice the cake. Remember, we have just said, finish as strong as you started, right? Finish with a punch. Basically, this is what you're saying. Finish strong. Don't have a wimply finishing. Tell us what you want. For example, if you want us to start treating drinking water, finish it up by telling us, you need to ensure that you need, as much as you need to ensure that you drink at least 3 liters of water per day, you need to make sure that this water is appropriately treated, okay? Or if maybe you're talking about cancer, for example, that if you feel like maybe you're discussing a certain kind of cancer, because also you can discuss all types of cancers, that would become a thesis. Even thesis, I'm not sure would accommodate that. That cancer tell us if you have these symptoms, then it's time to call in your doctor. Basically, that is how you make sure that you end strong by telling people what they need to do and making sure that the call to action is very straight. All right. Sorry, I jumped into tomorrow's part. I would want us to end our presentation there, and then I'll give you an assignment. And then tomorrow, looking at what you will have come up with and what you will have pulled out as op-eds, we will discuss basically what is an op-ed and what is not. All right. As I finish, I want to encourage those who joined in late that you please take time to check up with your colleagues on what we have learned today, because tomorrow we'll not have too much of the introductory phase. And we may not also have too much time to do recap. Of course, we'll do recap as we move on, but it would really help if we can actually have a sense of what we discussed in the morning, so that we do not dwell on it. So for the afternoon session, the training still goes on, but at a personal level, so that you're able to do the following. Sorry, it's not written. I have to give it verbally. Hopefully you have somewhere you can scribble. Kevina, you can maybe catch this up in the comments. One is pull out from your newspaper what you believe from what we have discussed op-eds are, what you believe is an op-ed. Just pull it out. That is one. You can take a photo, you can copy and paste or whatever, but we just need a pull out of an op-ed. Second thing is identify the lead paragraph. Identify the lead paragraph. In that lead paragraph, identify the 5 W's and the H, and also identify what the call to action of that op-ed is. All right. You may want to look at a few op-eds and also check on different writings, styles of writing, so that when we are talking about writing styles, you are also familiar with what we are talking about. So you could, for your own advantage, go through a number of op-eds, just read through and see how different people write different op-eds. You could read maybe 2 op-eds of a certain writer and then go and read 2 other op-eds of another writer, see the difference, but just for the sake of our learning, just pull out one. In that one op-ed that you pull out, identify the lead. Once you identify the lead, identify the 5 W's and the H, okay? Some leads are going to accommodate all 5 W's and the H. Some other leads are going to accommodate a few of those and then dwell on the others along the body, which is still okay. Lastly, please take your time and write or draft an op-ed of your own topic. Take something that you're really comfortable with, something you really have a passion in, so that you don't have to do a lot of reading around it and a lot of research. Since this one is not for publishing, you may not want to go through the step of doing a lot of research of what people have written because it is not for publishing. But if you still have time to do that, it's a practical way of doing it, so you can still do it. If you don't have a particular topic that you'd like to draft on, remember what we said, scan the fuss on the media, go onto social media, go onto mainstream media, see what the fuss is, and see what you can learn out of that, and what you can actually, the topic you can actually cover out of that. So yeah, that is the assignment for tomorrow. But before we close on that, I would like to encourage all of us to actually take a time, reflect on how today's training has been, what was good, what was not, what could be improved, so that as we meet tomorrow, we will start off a better people. Otherwise, it has been very, 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 very pleasing for me to take you through this day's training. And thank you for those who have been actively participating. For those of us who have not been very active, it is for your own good. Kindly try and play as much active role as possible. I know sometimes the background is a bit noisy or a bit unfriendly, but this is an adult class. We understand. We understand some of you are transiting, some of you are in between meetings, some of you are in offices, some of you are with family at home. So do not mind too much, as long as the surrounding is not obscene. Just open your microphone. Let us hear what you have to contribute so that we all learn. You can imagine we are on average around 35 students now, leaving out the support team. And with that, you can imagine if everyone is teaching someone else something, either out of an experience or an opinion, we would all get out of here a lot better than when you basically get to hear from me. I also need to learn from you. Your colleagues also need to learn from you. So feel free for tomorrow to please just, you can keep your video off, but unmute yourself and let us get to interact better. And lastly, kindly take your assignments very seriously, because this is actually what will be able to make a difference between those who will leave out of this room and immediately be able to get off their communication, and those who will actually be able to improve, than those who will just basically come, learn, pick a tip or two, but still end up not publishing. The practical part is actually very, very important, and myself, I take it very important. So Kevina, I hope you're gracious enough to share the TCC email address so that those who pick it up will be able to share the assignments through the TCC official email. So thank you so much, team. Take your time, wrap this up, either in comments or unmuting and giving your opinion, and then it's a wrap. Thank you. Thank you so much. for those who are who have given their comments. I really appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. God bless you. We'll be able to read through and see what we can keep, what we can make better, and what we can actually purge out of our trainings. We are always learning. We are always becoming better. Someone has asked, what is the deadline of the assignment? We need to have it before tomorrow's training. The earlier, the better, but at least before 8 o'clock would be the ideal. But if you're not able to do it 8 o'clock, please just share it before tomorrow's session, which starts at, I believe, 9. We usually like giving you an hour to settle in your office. Yes, so we start tomorrow at 9, and then it would be great if we can have your assignments ahead so that we can look at them. But if you're still not able to put it on by any unfortunate chance, then please put it through before 9. Thank you. So God bless you so much. Please feel free to stay behind and put some of those comments. They're really important to us. And God bless you. Yes, we will use the same link for tomorrow. God bless you all and see you tomorrow. Feel free to leave. Feel free to continue leaving your messages. We are here.